Girl Scout Movement in the Public Schools by Mae Marsh. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush, Marquette, Michigan, June 2010. Girl Scout Movement in the Public Schools by Mae Marsh, published in Report of the Proceedings of the Pennsylvania State Educational Association, 1917. Miss Mae Marsh, captain of the Girl Scouts of Altoona, brought a troop of Girl Scouts in uniform from that city, and after giving an outline of the work done by the troop, and answering numerous questions on the Girl Scout movement, she invited the audience to the gymnasium, where the regulation Scout drill was given by the girls. The following paper was read by Miss Marsh on Girl Scouts in the Public Schools. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Girl Scouts, like Boy Scouts, are found all over the world. When Sir Robert Baden-Powell formed the first troop of Boy Scouts, 6,000 girls enrolled themselves. But, as Sir Robert's project did not include the admission of girls, he asked his sister, Miss Baden-Powell, to found a similar organization for girls, based on the Boy Scout laws, with activities and occupations properly adapted for girls. She then founded the Girl Guide organization. In America, in March 1912, the first patrols of Girl Guides were enrolled by Miss Juliet Lowe in Savannah, Georgia. In 1913, the national headquarters were established by her in Washington, D.C., and Miss Edith Johnston became the national secretary. The name Girl Guides was then changed to Girl Scouts because the object of the organization is to promote the 10 Scout laws: truth, loyalty, helpfulness, friendliness, courtesy, kindness, obedience, cheerfulness, purity, and thrift. The movement then grew and spread in a remarkable way. In 1915, a convention of Girl Scout leaders from most of the large cities was held, and a national council was formed, composed of delegates from the cities or communities where more than 100 Girl Scouts were enrolled. In 1916, headquarters were removed from Washington to New York. 8 girls in any town, school, or settlement may join together to form a patrol. They should have a captain who must be at least 21 years old. The captain selects a lieutenant who must be 18 years old, and the girls elect a patrol leader. In Europe, Girl Scout patrols are sometimes formed by grown women who wish to carry out the Girl Scout program of preparedness. Members of such patrols are called Senior Scouts. Senior Scouts make the 3 promises and accept the Scout law. They are organized in classes to learn first aid, signaling, marksmanship, or any other subject of the Girl Scout program of training. Each girl must promise on her honor to try to do 3 things. 1. To do my duty to God and to my country. 2. To help people at all times. 3. To obey the laws of the Scouts. Be prepared to do their duty is the motto of the Scouts, girls as well as boys. In order to live well, in order to possess the joy of life, and to be helpful to others, a Scout needs to apply her motto, "Be prepared," to herself. Strength and beauty should be hers in body, mind, and spirit. The body responds very readily to proper care and attention. The joyful exercise of vigorous outdoor games gives the finest type of training to the body, and at the same time the player enjoys the fun. A girl who develops a strong, agile body at the same time improves her brain. A girl with weak, flabby muscles cannot have the strength of character that goes with normal physical power. The Girl Scout organization aims to give the girl an opportunity to do the things that the girl naturally wishes to do, and at the same time gives her activities which are mentally, morally, and physically stimulating. The chief value of these activities is that the girl is being trained for fine womanhood and fine citizenship. Walking is the greatest exercise known, as well as the cheapest. A nation of good walkers is a healthy nation. Hence, the greatest stress is placed on hikes. While on these hikes, signaling, map making, military drilling, and camp life can be taught. The different tests, also, which the girl must pass, and the striving for the different merit badges, all tend to efficiency. In the military drilling, the instant attention to a command, prompt obedience to a given signal, repeated time after time, fixes the habit of alertness. Patriotism and respect to our flag are taught in the tenderfoot tests, also the history of our flag. Moreover, it is a part of a Girl Scout's duty to do a good turn to someone every day. Poppy Troop, Girl Scouts of Altoona, was organized on the 30th of April, 1917, with 17 charter members. We now have an active live wire troop of 50 members. Its first appearance in public was in the great parade held on Memorial Day. By request, the girls took charge of decorating the soldiers' graves in Fairview and Oak Ridge cemeteries. When the 3rd Regiment was stationed in our mountain city, a grand recruiting rally was held, the Girl Scouts assisting in this, taking part in 2 parades. For their services in this, Colonel Kemp tendered the services of the 3rd Regiment Band, 30 members strong, for the Girl Scouts' lawn fête, which proved a strong drawing attraction. The troop was called upon to aid the Red Cross in their great drive. They sold 800 tickets for the Red Cross benefit held at the Orpheum Theater, besides acting as ushers the first night of the performance. Each girl signed the food conservation card sent out to the Girl Scouts, pledging themselves to give up meat 1 day a week and bread 1 meal a day, living up to the slogan, "Every Scout to feed a soldier." The girls distributed the Liberty Loan literature, took in Liberty Loan subscriptions, besides taking a $50 bond in the name of the troop, quite a number of the members owning their own bonds besides. To pay for this bond, each girl pledged $1, either working for it or denying themselves some pleasure in order to make it up, thus learning the lesson of thrift. Besides all this outside work, in the 8 months of the troop's existence, the girls have taken several hikes, each 15 miles long, have given a demonstration drill in Hollidaysburg by request, and have passed their tenderfoot test of 50 questions. Through the kindness of Dr. Layton, superintendent of the Altoona schools, and the Altoona School Board, the Girl Scouts are taking up the high school junior year domestic science course. Besides this, they are studying first aid, signaling by semaphore and Morse, and sewing. The troop has a Red Cross division equipped with stretchers and emergency kits. It prides itself also upon possessing 3 buglers and 5 color bearers, including 2 mounted color bearers. These are just some of the activities of Poppy Troop, Girl Scouts of Altoona. Besides being intensely interested in their scout work, the girls carry their enthusiasm into the schoolroom, priding themselves on living up to their scout laws in their classwork. The teachers report that they can always tell a Girl Scout by her promptness in answering questions, willingness to help others, and implicit obedience. Their military bearing has also been very favorably commented upon. When a Girl Scout is called upon to take part in any school exercise, the teacher can always depend on her to do her bit, willingly, cheerfully, and promptly. Thus, through the Girl Scout movement, the girls are trained to be healthy, useful women and true patriotic citizens. It might prove of interest to state, in closing, that at the National Convention of Girl Scout Leaders held October 26 and 27 in New York City, Mrs. Woodrow Wilson, wife of the President of the United States, graciously accepted the honorary presidency of the Girl Scouts of America. Mrs. Juliette Lowe was again elected the acting national president. I thank you. End of Girl Scout Movement in the Public Schools by May Marsh. Girl Scouts by Mrs. Theodore H. Price. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush, Marquette, Michigan, June 2010. Girl Scouts by Mrs. Theodore H. Price, published in The Outlook, Volume 118, in 1918. The Girl Scout movement, now 6 years old, has become a vigorous and significant expression of national spirit. In 509 cities and towns of the United States, trim, khaki-clad girls have become familiar figures in every community demonstration. Through their scout activities, through participation in the actual business of life, cut down to the capacity of youth, These girls are being trained for citizenship in a school of service, a school that stresses the rights of the individual less than his responsibilities. Girl Scouts are the American outgrowth of the Girl Guides of England. Though springing from the same source as the Boy Scouts of America, and sharing the same ideals of citizenship and service, the two organizations, on the advice of Sir Robert Baden-Powell, the father of both, were made entirely distinct. When Sir Robert organized the Boy Scouts, he found among those seeking membership no less than 6,000 girls. To organize them he called on his sister, Miss Agnes Baden-Powell, who formed them into troops after the same general plan as the Boy Scouts, and called them Girl Guides. Interested with Miss Baden-Powell in this work was Mrs. Juliet Lowe, an American woman long resident in England. When, in 1912, she returned to her native city of Savannah, she was urged both by Miss Baden-Powell and her brother, Sir Robert, to form troops of American Girl Guides. She formed the troops after the plan suggested, but the matter of a name was taken out of her hands. The girls insisted on being called Girl Scouts, and Girl Scouts they became, and are so incorporated in Washington. Mrs. Lowe is still the active president of the organization, with Mrs. Woodrow Wilson as honorary president. The national headquarters are at 527 Fifth Avenue, New York City. The plan of the organization is simple and elastic and essentially democratic. Whenever 8 girls of about the same age may be gathered together, the Girl Scout plan fits. It is equally appealing to girls in boarding schools and in institutions, in fashionable suburban communities and in crowded city districts. Some of its most interesting troops are in institutions for deaf and blind and for tubercular children, where it has given these unfortunates a new point of contact with normal life. In the application of the principles of scouting to the philosophy of the young girl, it has been recognized that boys like to be boys, while girls do not like to be girls. They are fundamentally little women, and the surest way to win their interest is to open to them the pursuits of women so modified as to insure to them the rewards of achievement. Every activity of the Girl Scout program connects directly with adult life. The organization accepts the Girl Scout as a responsible member of society, entitled to its rewards. Hard tasks are not sweetened with elaborate ritual, but are accomplished by application and concentration because the results are worthwhile. The individual good turn, so potent in the Boy Scout plan, is not emphasized with the girls. A good turn done by the troop to the community is the unit of service rather than as individual to individual. Service in the home is emphasized because the home is the unit of society, and the good homemaker makes the good citizen. For nearly 5 years after its modest beginnings in Savannah, the Girl Scout movement grew slowly. It succeeded because girls liked it, and because the leaders in recreational work for girls, to whose attention it came, found in it a useful and successful device for holding and focusing the interests of their charges. In 1915, national headquarters were opened in New York. The organization now attracted the attention of educators seeking an instrument for that difficult process of carrying over the lessons of the primary agencies of education, the school and the Sunday school, into the daily life of youth. Dr. James E. Russell, Dean of Teachers College, became an officer of the organization and is active in formulating its educational policies and plans. Fellowships for the training of leaders have been established at Teachers College, Boston University, Johns Hopkins University, and New York University, while courses for leaders are given in colleges in Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and Minneapolis. The entrance of the United States into the war brought the Girl Scouts their great opportunity to translate their Scout vows of loyalty into patriotic service. The entire organization became a unit for war work. Other young girls might work their honest, earnest little fingers off with grown-up organizations, but Girl Scouts worked as Girl Scouts, and their output was accredited to their own organization. They offered themselves to the Red Cross and were assigned definite duties by each local chapter. That these duties were usually the tedious and none too pleasant tasks cheerfully shirked by the grown-ups made no difference to the Girl Scouts. They have picked oakum and swept out workrooms from one end of the United States to the other. In New York, the girls have become sufficiently expert in making surgical dressings to open a Red Cross workroom of their own and to form their own Red Cross auxiliary. Thousands of surgical dressings have been made and shipped. In Philadelphia, where there are more than 100 troops, the girls organized a bazaar to raise money for a wool fund. The entire proceeds, $800, have been expended for wool for Girl Scout knitting. 350 Philadelphia Girl Scout mufflers are already in France. The Food Administration was quick to recognize the usefulness of the girls. 27 school Girl Scouts of Washington have been trained as home demonstrators and have pledged their Saturdays and holidays to the work of demonstrating canning methods and war cookery in clubs, churches, schools, etc. Mr. Hoover himself approved a special Girl Scout pledge card whereby candy and soda water were cheerfully and solemnly laid on the sacrificial altar. Without previous plans and without hope of reward, Girl Scouts nevertheless were so active in the last Liberty Loan campaign, actually selling close to $500,000 worth of bonds, to say nothing of distributing tons of literature and running countless errands for countless committees, that their efforts won them the offer of official recognition for the next campaign of this kind. Whenever a girl's size war job has offered itself, the Girl Scouts have taken it on. Their scrap books and puzzle cards have gone to hundreds of convalescent homes in France. Their packages have decked soldiers' Christmas trees from Maine to California. Their trench candles, thousands upon thousands of them, have lighted dugouts the length of the Allied lines. The organization of the Girl Scouts, acting under the direction of the Army and Navy Commission on Training Camp Activities, has found an urgent field for usefulness in the towns adjacent to the camps. The best service you can do, said the Army authorities, is to keep the girls out of the camps. This is the task the Girl Scout leaders have set themselves. The work is now officially organized in the vicinity of Camp Devens, Massachusetts, and is being started near other camps. It puts into the life of the village girl so vigorous and constructive a program of definite service, and gives her a code of honor so completely within her comprehension that she has neither time nor desire to loiter around the camps. In this, as in every other activity, Girl Scouts serve America first in terms of everyday living. End of Girl Scouts by Mrs. Theodore H. Price. Girl Scouts as an Educational Force by Juliette Lowe. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush, Marquette, Michigan, June 2010. Girl Scouts as an Educational Force by Juliette Lowe, published in Bulletin No. 88 by United States Bureau of Education, 1919. So closely is learning interwoven with doing that to the Girl Scout herself all the Scout activities are just play. To the observant educator, the fundamentals of citizenship, good health, and community spirit are implanted through the natural ambition of the Girl Scout to strive for proficiency badges and Scout honors. Subtler, but by no means less important, is the morale established by the Girl Scout promise and law. The tests for Scout rank and the system of merit and proficiency badges are planned with the 4 essentials for wholesome living in mind, head work, handwork, health, and helpfulness. The declared purpose of the Girl Scout organization is to promote the virtues of womanhood by training girls to recognize their obligations to God and country, to prepare for duties devolving upon women in the home, in society, and the state, and to guide them in ways conducive to personal honor and the public good. In other words, to train girls for citizenship in the broadest sense. This is the undeclared desire in every adolescent girl's heart. Girl Scout troops are her laboratory courses in the school of living. Thus, the educational program of Girl Scouts supplements and strengthens the educational efforts of both the home and the school. The average home is evolved by the parents for their own comfort and convenience. The schoolroom atmosphere and environment are created by the personality of the teacher. The adolescent girl longs for a place of her very own, where she can be herself and where she can do the things she wants to do. The Girl Scout troop fulfills this need, because it is the girl's own creation, founded and managed by her in cooperation with comrades of her own age. The scope of Girl Scout work is national. Troops are organized in every state except Utah, and they are active in the territory of Hawaii. Girl Scout troops are affiliated with the work of schools, churches, settlement houses, civic councils, community welfare organizations, women's clubs, etc. But the Girl Scouts organizations are nonsectarian and non-political. A girl may belong to other organizations at the same time. On March 1, 1919, 41,225 girls between the ages of 10 and 18 were enrolled as Girl Scouts in the United States. Registrations were made at the rate of about 150 per day since January 1, 1919. This refers to the number of girls who have passed their tenderfoot tests. There is also a great number of girls preparing for the tenderfoot examinations who are striving to reach the Scout ideal. Statistics of October 1917 show an enrollment at that time of about 9,000. The movement started with a small group of girls in Savannah, Georgia, in March 1912. The Girl Scouts were incorporated as a national organization on June 10, 1915. The number of second-class and first-class Scouts has not been compiled, but the accomplishments of the organization indicate that large numbers have qualified for higher rank. The form of the laws, promise, and the tests for Scout rank were revised by the National Council in January 1919. At the opening of every Girl Scout troop meeting there is a simple ceremony. After the Scouts salute the flag of the United States and pledge their allegiance, the captain gives the crisp command, "Scouts, give your promise." They reply as follows: "On my honor, I will try to be true to God and my country, to help others at all times, and to obey the Scout laws." "Scouts, repeat the laws," is the next command. The Scouts answer, "A Girl Scout is trustworthy. A Girl Scout is loyal. A Girl Scout is helpful. A Girl Scout is kind. A Girl Scout is clean. A Girl Scout is courteous. A Girl Scout is persevering. A Girl Scout is obedient. A Girl Scout is cheerful. A Girl Scout is thrifty." "Girl Scouts, give the motto," is the final order. The girls answer, "Be prepared." There are 3 classes of Scouts: tenderfoot Scouts, at least 10 years old; second-class Scouts; first-class Scouts up to 18 years of age. No girl may wear the Girl Scout pin, insignia, or uniform until she is formally accepted as a tenderfoot Scout. To arrive at this distinction she must be at least 10 years old, and she must pass the following test to the satisfaction of the Girl Scout officer in charge. For head work, she must first of all know the Scout promise and laws, and the Girl Scout motto, "Be prepared," and the Girl Scout slogan, "Do a good turn daily." She must also know by heart the first and last verses of the Star-Spangled Banner, and the full name of the President of the United States, the governor of her state, and the head of her city or town government. For hand work, she must be able to tie 4 sailor knots in approved fashion, the reef, bowline, clove hitch, and sheepshank. For health knowledge, she learns the simple setting up exercises and tenderfoot drill. For helpfulness, she promises to try to do a good turn daily to her troop, her school, her home, or her community. The tests which must be passed for rank as a second-class Scout carry on to more advanced stages the development of head work, hand work, hygiene, and general helpfulness begun in tenderfoot Scouthood. The second-class Scout for head work learns the history and meaning of the flag, knows her own measurements and how to record them, can recognize 6 animals, 6 birds, 6 flowers, 6 trees, and describe them so that another person may recognize them on sight. She learns the 16 points of the compass, how to prevent fire, and how to stop it if fire starts. She is capable of using both the General Service Code and the Semaphore Code. The second-class Scout trains her powers of observation by playing games that require quick eye and dependable memory, such as noting at a glance the contents of a shop window, the appearance of passers-by in the street, or the game of tracking and stalking in the open. For handwork, the second-class scout learns to lay and light a fire in a stove, in a gas stove, or in the open, using not more than 2 matches. Having made her fire, she learns to cook simple dishes such as cereals, vegetables, meats, fish, or eggs. She learns to set a table properly for 2 courses. She learns to make and air a bed properly, and she learns to make a bed for an invalid. The second-class scout also learns to sew a seam, hem, darn, either knit or crochet, and she must present a garment made by herself which demonstrates her skill as a needlewoman. She must also press out a scout uniform. For health knowledge, the second-class scout demonstrates her ability to stop bleeding, to remove grit from the eye, to treat ivy poisoning, to bandage a sprained ankle, to remove a splinter, and she must know the scout laws of health. For helpfulness, she is required to apply what she learns for the benefit of others, in service rendered to the troop, school, home, church, or community. Thrift is encouraged in the second-class scout test, inasmuch as the girl is required to earn or save enough to purchase some personal or troop equipment. Scouts of the second class take pride in drilling with snap and precision. The first-class scout is almost a grown-up woman, capable of bearing the responsibilities that will come to her in her own home and in the community. The tests require that she be trained to higher efficiency in headwork, handwork, health knowledge, and helpfulness. It is the ambition of every Girl Scout to reach the rank of a first-class scout, when she may work for the highest honor of all, the Golden Eaglet Badge, for which the requirements have been raised from 14 points for proficiency badges to 21 points. 26 scouts in the United States have won the Golden Eaglet under the 14-point ruling. For headwork, her judgment is called into play to make a rough sketch of the district around the troop meeting place. She is required to judge height, weight, numbers, and distance according to the rules in the Girl Scout Handbook. The first-class scout can demonstrate how to find the points of the compass by the sun and stars. She can send and receive messages in general service code and in semaphore code at 30 letters per minute. The first-class scout test requires that she be skilled in handcraft and housewifery, demonstrating her knowledge of home nursing, first aid, Red Cross standards, child care, housekeeping, and that she also earn at least one of the following proficiency badges: laundress, cook, needlewoman, or gardener. She must also do one or more of the following things: take an overnight hike in the open, carrying all equipment and rations, or be one of 4 to construct a practicable lean-to, or be able to do the outer edge on skates, skate backward and stop suddenly, or show her acquaintance from personal observation of the habits of 4 animals or birds, or organize a daytime hike for younger girls, arranging the food, transportation, occupations, etc. For health knowledge, in addition to earning the first aid badge, she must earn one other merit badge. For helpfulness, she must present a tenderfoot scout trained by herself, present to the scout officers proof of some definite service to her community. For thrift, she must earn at least $1 and start a savings account. Second-class scouts may earn all merit badges except the Golden Eaglet, which may be awarded to first-class scouts. The value of Girl Scout training is shown in the war work they accomplished in connection with the Red Cross, the War Garden Commission, the Food Administration, the Liberty Loans and the Thrift campaigns, the Americanization work, and the labor replacement work by which these young girls released older women from home duties for war work of various kinds. None of these activities were new to the Girl Scouts, for there are Scout merit badges to be won for first aid, artist, athletics, automobile driving, aviation, bird study, seamanship, child care, clerk, civics, cook, invalid cookery, cyclist, dairy, electricity, farmer, gardener, personal health, laundress, marksmanship, music, naturalist, needlewoman, horsemanship, home nursing, housekeeping, interpreter, pathfinder, pioneer, photography, scribe, signaling, swimmer, telegraphy. All second-class scouts may compete for any or all of them. Most second-class scouts are working for some of them. All these activities are voluntary, and progress in scout rank comes solely from the girls' own initiative. The result is the development of the undefinable something in Girl Scouts which we call the scouting spirit, the esprit de corps, and an insistence on fair play, generous dealing, teamwork, coupled with individual development, which can all be summed up in the one word, character. Girl Scouts of today are the women of tomorrow. Even as young girls, they are eager to do their share of the world's work. The record of the Girl Scouts of Washington, D.C. during the influenza epidemic was typical of how Girl Scouts meet emergencies as they arise. Conditions were especially bad in Washington, and through their initiative and skilled labor, the Girl Scouts were able to save many lives. They made soups and broths and special dishes, which were delivered on doctors' prescriptions to more than 500 patients daily during the weeks of the epidemic. At the request of the Commissioner of Public Playgrounds in Washington, they prepared 5 gallons of soup daily for the luncheons of the poor children under his care, helping to prevent illness through supplying proper nourishment. Girl Scouts throughout the United States kept their knitting needles busy and knitted into Red Cross garments more than 2,550 pounds of wool. Thousands of surgical dressings were made for the Army hospitals. In Minneapolis, Girl Scouts picked oakum in the Red Cross workrooms for thousands of the pads needed for the hospitals in the war zone. During 1918, while the United States was actively at war, all of our people had an opportunity to put forth all their force for the nation's good. Those who were best trained were the most useful. For the Department of Agriculture and the War Garden Commissions, the Girl Scouts took up their spades and hoes and cultivated acres of war gardens, at a profit, too, as is shown by the records from New York City Scouts and others, who cleared an average profit of about 2 cents per square foot over all expenses. After their crops matured, the Girl Scouts went to work for the Food Administration and canned vegetables, fruits, jellies, jams, and pickles. In the munition works and the aeroplane factories, Girl Scouts, trained to obedience, trustworthiness, and perseverance, made themselves useful. Girl Scouts were employed as messengers by government departments. Others kept house and cared for younger children so that older folk could do other work needed for the war. Girl Scout troops sold Liberty bonds amounting to $3,151,100 in the third loan campaign, and they doubled that amount selling fourth loan bonds to the amount of $6,023,550. Troops also bought bonds from their own treasuries, helping the Women's Liberty Loan Committees by pasting posters and by acting as messengers. Girl Scouts also saved and earned money to buy $5,305 worth of thrift and war savings stamps. This is the minimum amount, because not all troops report their local activities to headquarters. So far, troops have reported the sale to other people of $12,370 worth of thrift stamps. During the war, we realized more keenly the number of foreign-torn people in our midst, who, while not actively against us, were not actively for us, because they did not know much about America or the language, customs, thoughts, and ideals of Americans. Most of the foreign people have children, and like all parents, their first thought and consideration is for the welfare of their children. If America proves kind to their children, they will cheerfully live and die for America. Girl Scouts found a very special patriotic service in teaching through Girl Scout troop work the ideals of American citizenship to the children of foreign parents. Older Scouts took great pride in starting troops in foreign settlements, training the Tenderfoot Scouts, and teaching them about American citizenship. Special commendation was given by the American First Committee to New York City for their work in teaching English to foreign women and girls. At the present moment, the most effective public service work that Girl Scout troops are doing is this Americanization work. Not only in big cities, but wherever there is a mill, a factory, or a mine, where foreign laborers live apart from the life of the American community around them. Girl Scouts are finding that they can be of service in bridging over the gulf of ignorance and misunderstanding. The real test of an educational system is in how well the students use the knowledge acquired. The following 3 instances of how Scouts are turning back to the community the benefits derived from their home, their school, and their Scout training deserve thoughtful consideration. In New Bedford, Massachusetts, foreign labor in the mills threatened to fall a prey to the epidemic of Bolshevism and industrial unrest. The city government, cooperating with the Chamber of Commerce, the school department, the YMCA, fraternal societies, and manufacturers' associations, launched an aggressive campaign of Americanization. Girl Scout troops and Boy Scout troops were used to give the patriotic instruction to foreign workers in each mill. In Cincinnati, Ohio, at the American House, where every opportunity is given to foreign men and women to become acquainted with American customs, habits, ideals, and the language we speak, Girl Scout troops have been formed to give patriotic instruction to foreign women and girls. These troops are officered by foreign-born girls who want to repay in some measure the benefits they have received from American institutions. The lieutenants of these troops are Girl Scouts of high school age who want to pass on the Scout training to others. In New York City, the local American First Committee formally commended the service rendered by Girl Scouts in teaching English to foreign women and girls. It is by furnishing wholesome outdoor and indoor activities under influences that tend to build a sturdy character as well as sturdy bodies that Girl Scouts are valuable in the educational work of the nation, which we depend upon to develop the girls of today into sane, responsible women who will be capable of bearing intelligently the personal and social responsibilities that will come to them only a few years hence. End of Girl Scouts as an Educational Force by Juliette Lowe.
Girl Scouts, Their Works, Ways, and Plays. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush, March 2009. Girl Scouts, Their Works, Ways, and Plays. Motto: Be prepared. Slogan: Do a good turn daily. Promise: On my honor I will try to do my duty to God and to my country, to help other people at all times, to obey the Scout laws. Laws: 1. A Girl Scout's honor is to be trusted. 2. A Girl Scout is loyal. 3. A Girl Scout's duty is to be useful and to help others. 4. A Girl Scout is a friend to all and a sister to every other Girl Scout. 5. A Girl Scout is courteous. 6. A Girl Scout is a friend to animals. 7. A Girl Scout obeys orders. 8. A Girl Scout is cheerful. 9. A Girl Scout is thrifty. 10. A Girl Scout is clean in thought, word, and deed. Girl Scouts, Their Works, Ways, and Plays. The Girl Scouts, a national organization, is open to any girl who expresses her desire to join and voluntarily accepts the promise and the laws. The object of the Girl Scouts is to bring to all girls the opportunity for group experience, outdoor life, and to learn through work, but more by play, to serve their community. Patterned after the Girl Guides of England, the sister organization of the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts has developed a method of self-government and a variety of activities that appear to be well suited to the desires of the girls, as the 60,000 registered Scouts and the 5,000 new applicants each month testifies. Activities. The activities of the Girl Scouts may be grouped under 5 headings corresponding to 5 phases of women's life today. 1. The homemaker. 2. The producer. 3. The consumer. 4. The citizen. 5. The human being. 1. Woman's most ancient way of service: the homemaker, the nurse, and the mother. The program provides incentives for practicing woman's world-old arts by requiring an elementary proficiency in cooking, housekeeping, first aid, and the rules of healthful living for any Girl Scout passing beyond the tenderfoot stage. Of the 40-odd subjects for which proficiency badges are given, more than 1/4 are in subjects directly related to the services of woman in the home, as mother, nurse, or homekeeper. Into this work so often distasteful because solitary is brought the sense of comradeship. This is effected partly by having much of the actual training done in groups. Another element is the public recognition and rewarding of skill in this, woman's most elementary service to the world, usually taken for granted and ignored. The spirit of play infused into the simplest and most repetitious of household tasks banishes drudgery. "Give us, oh give us," says Carlyle, "a man who sings at his work. He will do more in the same time, he will do it better, he will persevere longer. Wondrous is the strength of cheerfulness, altogether past comprehension its power of endurance." 2. Woman the producer. Handicrafts of many sorts enter into the program of the Girl Scouts. In camping, girls must know how to set up tents, build lean-tos, and construct fireplaces. They must also know how to make knots of various sorts to use for bandages, tying parcels, hitching, and so forth. Among the productive occupations in which proficiency badges are awarded are beekeeping, dairying, and general farming, gardening, weaving, and needlework. 3. Woman the consumer. One of the features in modern economics which is only beginning to be recognized is the fact that women form the consuming public. There are very few purchases, even for men's own use, which women do not have a hand in selecting. Practically the entire burden of household buying in all departments falls on the woman. In France this has long been recognized, and the women of the middle classes are the buying partners and bookkeepers in their husband's business. In America the test of a good husband is that he brings home his pay envelope unopened, a tacit recognition that the mother controls spending. The Girl Scouts encourage thrifty habits and learning economy of buying in all of its activities. One of the 10 Scout laws is that a Girl Scout is thrifty. 4. Woman the citizen. The basic organization of the Girl Scouts into the self-governing unit of a patrol is in itself an excellent means of political training. Patrols and troops conduct their own meetings, and the Scouts learn the elements of parliamentary law. Working together in groups they realize the necessity for democratic decisions. They also come to have community interests of an impersonal sort. This is perhaps the greatest single contribution of the Scouts toward the training of girls for citizenship. Little boys play together, and not only play together, but with men and boys of all ages. The interest of baseball is not confined to any one age. The rules of the game are the same for all, and the smallest boy's judgment on the skill of the players may be as valid as that of the oldest fan. Girls have had in the past no such common interests. Their games have been either solitary or in very small groups in activities largely of a personal character. If women are to be effective in modern political society, they must have from very earliest youth gregarious interests and occupations. 5. Woman the human being. Political economy was for a long time known as the dead science, and was quite ineffective socially. This was largely because it attempted to split man, the human being, into theoretical units such as the producer or the consumer. In the same way, many organizations for women have died because they have not remembered that woman is first of all a human being. Thus nearly all institutions for women, even those supposedly purely educational in character, have existed to shelter her from the world, or to segregate her, or have been designed to make her into a good servant or to finish her for society. The activities of the Girl Scouts have been selected on quite a different plan. They have not been designed for women, but for women as human beings. Real work may be followed with a great deal of enjoyment provided it is creative and awakens the instinct of workmanship. But it is when at play that a human being realizes his own nature the most fully. So dancing, sports of all kinds, hiking, camping, boating, athletics, and storytelling are encouraged not only as a means of recreation and for physical development, but are made a basic part of the Girl Scout program. Methods. The activities of the Girl Scouts are, of course, not peculiar to this organization. Every one of them is provided for elsewhere, in schools, clubs, and societies, but the way in which they are combined and coordinated about certain basic principles is peculiar to the Girl Scouts. In the first place, all these activities have a common motive, which is preparation for a fuller life for the individual, not only in her personal, but in her social relations. It is believed that the habits formed and the concrete information acquired in these activities both contribute to the girls being ready to meet intellectually most of the situations that are likely to arise in their later life. This concept is expressed in the Girl Scout motto, "Be prepared." The method of preparation followed is that found in nature, whereby young animals and birds play at doing all the things they will need to do well when they are grown and must feed and fend for themselves and their babies. To play any game one must know the rules, so the Girl Scouts have laws that they believe cover most of the needs of the game of life. The Girl Scout laws are 10. 1. A Girl Scout's honor is to be trusted. 2. A Girl Scout is loyal. 3. A Girl Scout's duty is to be useful and to help others. 4. A Girl Scout is a friend to all and a sister to every other Girl Scout. 5. A Girl Scout is courteous. 6. A Girl Scout is a friend to animals. 7. A Girl Scout obeys orders. 8. A Girl Scout is cheerful. 9. A Girl Scout is thrifty. 10. A Girl Scout is clean in thought, word, and deed. These laws are known by all Girl Scouts, but the promise to obey them is made only after they are understood and voluntarily accepted. The promise summarizes the laws and is: "On my honor I will try to be true to God and my country, to help others at all times, to obey the Scout laws." The heart of the laws is helpfulness, and so the Scouts have a slogan, "Do a good turn daily." By following this in letter and spirit, helpfulness becomes second nature. Because the Girl Scouts are citizens, they know and respect the meaning of the flag, and one of the first things they learn is the pledge. "I pledge allegiance to my flag, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." Organization and drill. Some observers have criticized the Girl Scout organization because of its apparent military character. It is true that the girls wear a uniform of khaki and are grouped in patrols corresponding to the fours in the Army, that they salute and learn simple forms of drill and signaling. But the reason they do this is because the military organization happens to be the oldest form of organization in the world, and it works. It is the best way men have found of getting a number of persons to work together. Following directions given to a group is quite a different matter from doing something alone, and most of us need special training in this. A group of 8 has been found to work the best because it is the largest number that can be handled by a person just beginning to be a leader, and moreover elementary qualities of leadership seem to exist in just about the proportion of 1 in 8. It is probably on this account that children take so kindly to the form, rather than because of the glamour of the Army, though this must be admitted as a factor. In actual practice, the drill and signaling take up a very small portion of the program, and are nowhere followed as ends in themselves, but only as a means to an end. The uniform. The uniform is simple, durable, and allows freedom of action. It is of khaki because this has been found to be the best wearing fabric and color. It is not easily torn and does not readily soil. Wearing it gives the girls a sense of belonging to a larger group, such as it is hard to get in any other way. It keeps constantly before them the fact that they represent a community to whose laws they have voluntarily subscribed and whose honor they uphold. It is well, too, to have an impersonal costume, if for no other reason than to counteract the tendency of girls to concentrate upon their personal appearance. To have a neat, simple, useful garb is a novel experience to many an overdressed doll who has been taught to measure all worth by extravagance of appearance. Organization. Scouts of different ages. The original Girl Scout program was designed mainly with the needs of the young adolescent in mind, and the age was fixed from 10 to 18 years. But the little girls wanted to come in, and so a separate division was made for them called the Brownies, or Junior Scouts. Then the older girls and women wanted to join, and as time went on the original Girl Scouts grew up, but not out of, the Scout movement, and programs are being made for Senior Scouts who are 18 and over. The three age groups seem to be natural ones, and each has its own methods and activities. The larger number of Girl Scouts belong to the middle adolescent group. All Scouts are organized in the same way and all are enrolled with the National Girl Scout organization. Patrol. 8 girls form a patrol, which is the working unit. The 8 select from their own group a patrol leader who has charge of the activities for a month or any period of time the patrol may designate. The patrol leader has immediate responsibilities for the activities of the 8. It is desirable to have each girl of a patrol serve as a leader at some time or other. Troop. 1 or more patrols constitute a troop, which is the administrative unit recognized by the national organization. Captain. The troop is under the direction of a captain, who must be at least 21 years of age, and whose qualification as a leader of young girls is passed upon by national headquarters before she is commissioned. Lieutenant. A captain may have 1 or more lieutenants. The lieutenant must be at least 18 years of age, and her commission is likewise subject to control by national headquarters. Captains and lieutenants may be organized into associations in any given locality. Scout classes. There are 3 classes of Girl Scouts, the youngest being the Tenderfoot, the name given by frontiersmen to the man from the city who is not hardened to the rough life out of doors. Even the Tenderfoot, however, has to know some things, including the promise, laws, slogan and motto, how to salute, and the respect due to the flag, and making some useful knots. The second class Scout has been a Tenderfoot for at least 1 month, and can pass a test of distinctly greater difficulty, including a good deal about cooking and housekeeping, animals and birds, flowers and trees, some important first aid things, and the laws of health. The highest is the first class Scout, and is to be attained only by a young person of considerable accomplishment. She must be able to find her way about city or country without any of the usual aids, using only the compass and her developed judgment of distance and direction. She must also be able to communicate and receive messages in 2 ways, by signaling in semaphore and the general service codes, which is the code used for telegraphing and wireless, and which can be used in several ways. She must have shown proficiency in home nursing, child care, and housekeeping, and in addition in either laundering, cooking, needlework, or gardening. She must also be an all-round outdoors person, familiar with camping and able to lead in this, or be a good skater or a naturalist, or be able to swim. Not only must she know all these different things, but she must also have trained a Tenderfoot and served her community. Proficiency badges. After a Girl Scout has attained to first class, there are still other worlds to conquer, as the badges she has earned on the way are only a few of the many kinds still to be worked toward. There are at present no less than 46 kinds of subjects in which a Scout may achieve, and more are being added daily. Just to mention a few: a Girl Scout may be an astronomer, a beekeeper, a dairymaid, or a dancer, an electrician, a geologist, a horsewoman, an interpreter, a motorist or a musician, a scribe, a swimmer, or accomplished in thrift. Each subject has its own badge, and when earned this is sewn into the uniform. Council. There may also be, and this is desirable, a council composed of women and men representing all the best interests of the community: parents, schools, religious denominations of all sorts, business, producers, women's clubs, and other social and philanthropic organizations. The council acts as the link between the Girl Scouts and the community. It has the same relation to the separate troops that the school board has to the schools, that is, it guides and decides upon policies and standards, interprets the Scouts to the community, and the community to the Scouts. It does not do the executive or teaching work; that belongs to the captains, lieutenants, and patrol leaders. Another of the functions of the council is to interest public-spirited women and men, particularly artists and scientists, in Girl Scout work, and get them to act as referees in awarding merit badges for proficiency in the many lines encouraged for Girl Scouts. But the community's resources of wisdom are not only in the schools and museums and laboratories and studios. These are mostly to be found only in large cities. It is a poor place that does not have one or more wise old persons, a farmer learned in nature ways, a retired sailor stocked with sea lore, or a mother of men who knows life as perhaps no one else can. The wise council will know where to find these natural teachers and see that the children go to their schools. Another prime function of the council is the raising of funds and to make available such other material equipment as camp sites, meeting places for the troops, etc. The captain should turn to the council for help in arranging and directing rallies, dances, fairs, pageants, and other devices for entertainment or securing money. National Organization. The central governing body of the Girl Scouts is the National Council made up of elected delegates from all local groups. The National Council works through an executive board, which conducts national headquarters in New York. The National Director is in charge of headquarters and has direct administrative responsibility for the work of the whole organization, with the general divisions of field, business, publication, and education. Officers, National Headquarters, Girl Scouts, Inc. Honorary President, Mrs. Woodrow Wilson. President, Mrs. Juliet Lowe. First Vice President, Mrs. Arthur O. Choate. Second Vice President, Mrs. Herbert Hoover. Treasurer, Dunleavy Milbank. Chairman, Executive Board, Mrs. V. Everett Macy. Director, Mrs. Jane Dieter Rippon. Executive Board, Mrs. Selden Bacon, Mrs. Nicholas F. Brady, Miss Ellen M. Cassett, Mrs. Arthur O. Choate, Mr. Francis P. Dodge, Miss Emma R. Hall, Mrs. Juliet Lowe, Mrs. V. Everett Macy, Mrs. Snowden Marshall, Mrs. Robert G. Meade, Mr. Dunleavy Milbank, Miss Lulwyn Parsons, Mrs. Harold I. Pratt, Mrs. Theodore H. Price, Mrs. W. N. Rothschild, Dr. James E. Russell, Mrs. George W. Stevens, Mrs. James J. Storrow, Mrs. Percy Williams. End of Girl Scouts, Their Works, Ways, and Plays. Girl Scouts, Their History and Practice. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush, Marquette, Michigan, June 2010. Girl Scouts, Their History and Practice. Motto: Be prepared. Slogan: Do a good turn daily. Promise: On my honor, I will try to do my duty to God and to my country, to help other people at all times, to obey the Scout laws. Laws. 1. A Girl Scout's honor is to be trusted. 2. A Girl Scout is loyal. 3. A Girl Scout's duty is to be useful and to help others. 4. A Girl Scout is a friend to all and a sister to every other Girl Scout. 5. A Girl Scout is courteous. 6. A Girl Scout is a friend to animals. 7. A Girl Scout obeys orders. 8. A Girl Scout is cheerful. 9. A Girl Scout is thrifty. 10. A Girl Scout is clean in thought, word, and deed. History of the American Girl Scouts. When Sir Robert Baden-Powell founded the Boy Scout movement in England, it proved too attractive and too well adapted to youth to make it possible to limit its great opportunities to boys alone. The sister organization, known in England as the Girl Guides, quickly followed it and won equal success. Mrs. Juliet Lowe, an American visitor in England and a personal friend of the father of Scouting, realized the tremendous future of the movement for her country, and with the active and friendly cooperation of the Baden-Powells, she founded the Girl Guides in America, enrolling the first patrols in Savannah, Georgia, in March, 1912. In 1913, national headquarters was established in Washington, D.C., and the name changed to Girl Scouts. In 1915, the organization was incorporated with the legal title Girl Scouts Incorporated. In 1916, national headquarters were moved to New York, and the methods and standards of what was plainly to be a nationwide organization became established on a broad, practical basis. The first national convention was held in 1915, and each succeeding year has shown a larger and more enthusiastic body of delegates, and a public more and more interested in this steadily growing army of girls and young women who are learning in the happiest way to combine patriotism, outdoor activities of every kind, skill in every branch of domestic science, and high standards of community service. Every side of the girl's nature is brought out and developed by enthusiastic captains, who join in the games and various forms of training and encourage teamwork and fair play. For the instruction of the captains, national camps and training schools are being established all over the country, and the schools and churches everywhere are cooperating eagerly with this great recreational movement, which they realize adds something to the life of the growing girl that they have been unable to supply. Colleges are offering fellowships in scouting as a serious course for would-be captains, and prominent citizens in every part of the country are identifying themselves with local councils in an advisory and helpful capacity. At the present writing, nearly 60,000 girls and more than 3,000 captains represent the original little troop in Savannah. Surely a satisfying sight for our founder and national president when she realizes what a healthy sprig she has transplanted from the mother country. Aims. While the aims of Scouting are similar to those of the schools, the church, and the home, its methods are less direct, and success depends upon the attraction which the program has for the girls. Belonging to an organization, the uniform, such novel activities as knot tying, hiking, signaling, and drilling, the chance for leadership, the laws of which they voluntarily subscribe, and the recognition of ability by the system of giving badges, are the distinctive elements of Scouting. They succeed in bringing about improved health, approved standards of behavior towards others, a general arousing of the imagination as well as practical knowledge. The ideal background for the entire program is cheerful companionship in the open. Standards. The standards of the Girl Scouts are expressed in their laws and promise, their motto and slogan, which are as follows. Laws. 1. A Girl Scout's honor is to be trusted. 2. A Girl Scout is loyal. 3. A Girl Scout's duty is to be useful and to help others. 4. A Girl Scout is a friend to all and a sister to every other Girl Scout. 5. A Girl Scout is courteous. 6. A Girl Scout is a friend to animals. 7. A Girl Scout obeys orders. 8. A Girl Scout is cheerful. 9. A Girl Scout is thrifty. 10. A Girl Scout is clean in thought, word, and deed. Promise. On my honor I will try to do my duty to God and to my country, to help other people at all times, to obey the Scout laws. Motto. Be prepared. Slogan. Do a good turn daily. The best results are obtained by emphasizing the fact that these ways are the girl's own idea of the way to live, her choice. Success in expressing one's own ideas never fails to give satisfaction. Clever parents and teachers make use of this. A Scout is cheerful is a more effective method of influencing a girl, for instance, than any amount of advice on the subject. It seems to be more and more difficult to induce girls to learn or practice housework. For the average woman this is still necessary, and the more advanced schools have taken it up. For the girl whom neither the home nor the school has been able to reach, Scouting offers a most successful and attractive means of getting the practical information to the young generation. They will do for merit badges, in other words, what they will not do for their mothers or teachers. An effective manner of upholding and exercising these standards is, as has been abundantly proved by the Great War, the uniform. Earning and proving worthy of it stimulates child, girl, and woman alike. Uniform and ceremony, not overemphasized, but duly insisted upon, have a profound significance to the human race, and teach us to sink the individual interests and raise the standards of the group. Leadership and the patrol system. In general, a troop should not contain more than 30 or 40 girls. Many very experienced captains have larger troops when they have several lieutenants to assist them. The troops are divided into groups or patrols of 8 and treated as units, each under its own responsible leader. An invaluable step in character building is to put responsibility on the individual. This is done in electing a patrol leader to be responsible for the control of her patrol. Leaders should serve a limited time, and every girl in a patrol should have the experience of serving some time during her membership. It is up to her to take hold and develop the qualities of each girl in her patrol. It sounds a big order, but in practice it works. With a friendly rivalry established between patrols, a patrol esprit de corps is developed, and each girl in that patrol realizes that she is herself a responsible unit, and that the honor of her group depends on her efficiency in playing the game. The patrol system is an essential feature in Scouting. When this is lost sight of and the attitude of a teacher is adopted, making a troop a class, the vital spirit or meaning of Scouting is missed entirely. Although a powerful personality always can succeed with young people, in individual instances, it would be impossible to get enough of these people to make any impression upon the thousands of girls in the organization. Moreover, the average child is already overloaded with things to learn. What nobody teaches her is how to control herself, and thus learn to control others and take her share of responsibility. The whole Scouting technique is adapted to exactly this idea, and the patrol leader is the key note of it. The troop whose captain is apparently not managing it, but whose girls manage themselves under the Scout laws, is the ideal troop. The Court of Honor. The patrol leaders and their seconds form the Court of Honor, which manages the internal affairs of the troop. Its institution is the best guarantee for permanent vitality and success for the troop. It takes a great deal of minor routine work off the shoulders of the Scout captain, and at the same time gives to the girls a real responsibility and a serious outlook on the affairs of their troop. It was mainly due to the patrol leaders and to the Courts of Honor that the British Boy Scouts were able to carry on useful work during the war. The Court of Honor decides awards and punishments, and interprets rules in individual instances. Methods. Not only should the activities be those which they are not getting through other channels, but they should be presented in ways which attract the girls. It should never be forgotten that Scouting is chosen by the girls because it interests them. Use as bait the food the fish likes. If you bait your hook with a kind of food that you yourself like, unless you happen to have a natural affinity for young people, it is probable that you will not catch many. If the Scouting program fails to interest girls, they will find something that does. The program should be varied and never ironclad, but adapted to fill the needs of the special girl. Examples. Few city girls have much chance to be in the country. An effort should be made to get them out on hikes and weekend camping trips. Some homes and schools do not teach girls such practical things as cooking, bed making, while some groups of girls have no conception of obligation to other people or any sense of citizenship. In each case, the wise captain attempts to discover the novel activity which, besides being helpful, will attract the girls. The wise captain does not expect girls to pay great attention to any one subject for very long, and does not teach or lecture. They get enough of that in school. The captain is rather a sort of older playfellow, who lets the girls choose activities which interest her, and she will learn for herself. Most of the activities will be of the nature of play. Play is always a means to mental and physical development. The best play leads towards adult forms of leadership, cooperation, entertaining, artistic execution, and community service. Any captain who finds herself judging her troop's efficiency by the old-fashioned system of examination marks based on a 100% scale shows herself out of touch not only with the Scouting spirit, but with the whole trend of modern education today. When the tendency of great universities is distinctly toward substituting psychological tests for examinations, when the United States Army picks its officers by such tests, it would be absurd for a young people's recreational movement to wear its members out by piling such work on captain and scout. Examinations and tests should lay weight on what can be done, within time limits, and in first-class form. also on the effort expended by the girls and not on what can be written or recited. Young people love such tests, which relate closely to games, and they are of great practical value in daily life. They are the tests we meet every day. They interest the community to watch, and experts are always ready and interested to judge them. But nobody is interested in examination papers, and school children, and especially captains, should not be taxed with more than the absolute necessity of proving a candidate's fair grasp of the subject. In this connection great latitude should be allowed for the captain's knowledge of her girls, and their real ability and attitude. The girls are also good judges of each other. Remember that the girl with the best examination paper is not necessarily the best scout. The Council. The patrol system under the captain is the vital inside of scouting. In order to tie the organization closely to the community, the council must be well selected, strong, and active. An ideal council should represent the best homes in the community, the church, and the school. Some leading women, whose acquaintance is wide, should most certainly be on it, in order to help the captain out with a list of people qualified to judge the merit badges, for instance. Interested women who will help in camps, hikes, sales, moving picture benefits, rallies are most necessary, and the captain should feel no hesitation in asking advice or help from her council. At least one member whose daughter is on the local troop should be a practical link between the home and the troop. But all members should make a point of understanding the principles and distinctive methods of scouting, and see that they are carried out in their locality. Officers, National Headquarters Girl Scouts, Inc. Honorary President, Mrs. Woodrow Wilson. President, Mrs. Juliette Lowe. First Vice President, Mrs. Arthur O. Choate. Second Vice President, Mrs. Herbert Hoover. Treasurer, Dunlevy Milbank. Chairman, Executive Board, Mrs. V. Everett Macy. Director, Mrs. Jane Dieter Rippin. Executive Board, Mrs. Selden Bacon, Mrs. Nicholas F. Brady, Miss Ellen M. Cassett, Mrs. Arthur O. Choate, Mr. Francis P. Dodge, Miss Emma R. Hall, Mrs. Juliette Lowe, Mrs. V. Everett Macy, Mrs. Snowden Marshall, Mrs. Robert G. Meade, Mr. Dunlevy Milbank, Miss Lulewin Parsons, Mrs. Harold I. Pratt, Mrs. Theodore H. Price, Mrs. W. N. Rothschild, Dr. James E. Russell, Mrs. George W. Stevens, Mrs. James J. Storrow, Mrs. Percy Williams. End of The Girl Scouts, Their History and Practice. Why I Believe in Scouting for Girls by Mary Roberts Reinhardt. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush. March 2009. Why I Believe in Scouting for Girls by Mary Roberts Reinhardt. Girls are great idealists. No one familiar with the working of the girl mind can fail to recognize how quickly they respond to ideals. They dream dreams, not of success, but of happiness. They look up rather than out. But they are vague and uncertain, full of wistful yearnings that lead nowhere. Given a cause and a leader, and they will bring to it an almost pathetic eagerness, staunchness, loyalty, enthusiasm, and unselfish effort. There comes a critical time in a girl's mental and spiritual life when she is waiting impatiently for young womanhood. The things of her childhood have lost their interest. She has abandoned her dolls. The little boys she played with have deserted her and found the girl-less associations of the teens. They have their clubs, their sports, their meeting places. But to the young girl there is nothing but that period of waiting. She is peculiarly isolated. Her family often finds her strange. She is moody and dreamy. She begins to spend an almost alarming amount of time and thought upon her appearance. The family says, "What in the world is the matter with Jane?" And her father suggests it is too much going to the moving pictures. But the truth is that Jane is idle. She does not belong, between babyhood and womanhood anywhere in the social organization. She is active and romantic. Her days are a long waiting for maturity, and with maturity the fulfillment of her dreams, of love, of marriage, of motherhood. She haunts the movies because she finds there vicarious romance and vicarious adventure. The great outdoors is hers to play in, on the screen. And at the same time, with no increased outlet for her activities, her imagination is being stimulated as never before. Books, magazines, automobiles, moving pictures, all are revealing to her this strange thing we call life, which is hers to observe, but not yet to live. She is a yearning onlooker. It is time to realize that hundreds of thousands of young girls in this country, doubly important now that they are future citizens as well as the potential mothers of future citizens, must be given occupation, a feeling of responsibility, a practical ideal to which they may bring their innate loyalty and enthusiasm. They need organized play and athletics. They need something concrete to tie to. They need to be taught, if you please, what is the gang spirit among boys. They need to learn that their young bodies are to be used instead of decorated. Until they learn that, we shall have sickly mothers and puny babies. No single movement for the improvement of American people as a race, no advance of science or sanitation can compare in importance with the necessity for building up morality, spirituality, and bodily our future mothers. They need to be taught certain loyalties, sex loyalty, loyalty to ideals, loyalty to country. This last, loyalty to country, has to be taught. When a man learns to take off his hat to the flag, he has a new respect for it. Some of our girls need to be taught honesty. They cover their dreams with small deceits. They seek romance out of sheer boredom, and are driven into hypocrisy. The boy has fewer dreams to conceal, and he is honest with the honesty of fresh air and the great outdoors. When we give our girls occupation, when we get them out of doors, when we give them organized play in the open, there will be fewer morbid women. Give them something to do that interests them, get them out into the air, fill in the waiting years with work and play. Give them some rules of life which will appeal alike to their imaginations and to their instinctive desire for something better. Let them look out as well as up. Nearest of all the proposed plans to cope with what an increasing number of families are finding to be their problem, the adolescent girl, the Girl Scout movement fulfills all these requirements. It is sane, healthy, and normal. It teaches honesty, purity, vigor, and love of country. And it takes the girl in her teens and gives her a live interest in the present instead of the future. It should have nationwide support. End of Why I Believe in Scouting for Girls, by Mary Roberts Reinhardt.
The Girl Scouts, A Training School for Womanhood, by Kate Douglas Smith Wiggin. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush, Marquette, Michigan, June 2010. The Girl Scouts, A Training School for Womanhood, by Kate Douglas Smith Wiggin. I am heartily interested in the Girl Scouts of America. The fact is, I think I was always a Girl Scout myself, although the name was unknown. Yes, from the very beginning. Even my first youthful story was scouty in tone, if I may invent a word. Then, for a few years afterward, when I was scoutingly busy educating little street Arabs in San Francisco, I wrote books, too, for and about younger children, but there came a time when Polly Oliver's Problem brought me a girl public. It was not an oppressively large one. That is, I never was mobbed in the streets by Polly's admirers, but they existed, and heavens, how many letters they wrote! I see now that Polly was a real Girl Scout, but faithful as she unconsciously was to the then unwritten laws of the sisterhood, she faded into insignificance when my absolutely true-to-type scout appeared in the guise of Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. Rebecca did not reform, convert, or uplift her seniors. her parents, grandparents, neighbors, and constituents, but she could never keep her hands off things that needed to be done, and whatever enterprise was on hand, there was Rebecca to be found, sometimes on the outskirts, frequently, I fear, in its storm center. Do you remember that it was Rebecca and her 12-year-old friends who sewed the white stars on the Riverboro home-made flag, just as the Roosevelt High School girls have been doing for their great leader these last weeks? My summer home lies between two main villages on opposite sides of the Saco River. There are Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts in each of the villages, but off the main roads, almost on the fringe of the pine forests, are boys and girls too far away from one another to reach any group. One little chap said to me, "My brother Tim wants to be a scout, but there isn't anybody to be a leader, and the boys live too far apart. Tim's got all the circulars and books and instructions, and he can be a lone scout, but he doesn't want to be a lone scout, Tim doesn't. He wants to be with other boys." The very words "a lone scout" suggested a story to me that I have never written, but wish that these words might reach the eye of a girl who would like to practice the scout virtues, even if she cannot belong to the great band. It is hard, without the companionship and inspiration of a large friendly company, to follow a secret ideal and an imaginary leader, to be a lone scout, yet to be working with thousands of unknown little sisters. All the while that the lone scout is learning to be a woman, true, brave, busy, thrifty, cheerful, she can say to herself, "To help a little is to do the work of the world." That is the real slogan of the Girl Scouts, since for the most part they do little duties, assume small responsibilities, carry the lighter burdens. Above all, they learn to carry on, doing a woman's work in a woman's way, doing small things that women have always done as well as the new things that have opened to women, either by their own pluck, or because men have at last given women a chance, and doing them patiently, self-forgettingly, with the old-fashioned touch of a woman's hand. The world isn't in need of women who are duplicates of men. A girl should try to be the best scout in the world, if it is in her to go so far, but she must remember that after all she is a girl, not a Boy Scout. End of the Girl Scouts, A Training School for Womanhood, by Kate Douglas Smith Wiggin.
How Scouting Began, by Robert Baden-Powell. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush, Marquette, Michigan, July 2010. Scouting for Girls, Official Handbook of the Girl Scouts. Foreword. How Scouting Began. How did Scouting come to be used by girls? That is what I have been asked. Well, it was this way. In the beginning I had used Scouting, that is, woodcraft, handiness, and cheery helpfulness, as a means for training young soldiers when they first join the army, to help them become handy, capable men, and able to hold their own with anyone instead of being mere drilled machines. You have read about the wars in your country against the Red Indians, of the gallantry of the soldiers against the cunning of the red man, and what is more, of the pluck of your women on those dangerous frontiers. Well, we have had much the same sort of thing in South Africa. Over and over again I have seen there the wonderful bravery and resourcefulness of the women when the tribes of Zulu or Matabals have been out on the warpath against the white settlers. In the Boer War a number of women volunteered to help my forces as nurses or otherwise. They were full of pluck and energy, but unfortunately they had never been trained to do anything, and so with all the good will in the world they were of no use. I could not help feeling how splendid it would be if one could only train them in peace time in the same way one trained the young soldiers, that is, through scoutcraft. I afterwards took to training boys in that way, but I had not been long at it before the girls came along and offered to do the very thing I had hoped for. They wanted to take up Scouting also. They did not merely want to be the imitators of the boys, they wanted a line of their own. So I gave them a smart blue uniform and the names of guides, and my sister wrote an outline of the scheme. The name Guide appealed to the British girls because the pick of our frontier force in India is the Corps of Guides. The term cavalry or infantry hardly describes it, since it is composed of all-round, hardy men ready to take on any job in the campaigning line and do it well. Then, too, a woman who can be a good and helpful comrade to her brother or husband or son along the path of life is really a guide to him. The name guide, therefore, just describes the members of our sisterhood, who, besides being handy and ready for any kind of duty, are also a jolly happy family, and likely to be good, cheery comrades to their mankind. The coming of the Great War gave the Girl Guides their opportunity, and they quickly showed the value of their training by undertaking a variety of duties which made them valuable to their country in her time of need. My wife, Lady Baden-Powell, was elected by the members to be the chief guide, and under her the movement had gone ahead at an amazing pace, spreading to most foreign countries. It is thanks to Mrs. Juliet Low of Savannah that the movement was successfully started in America, and though the name Girl Scouts has been used, it is all part of the same sisterhood, working to the same ends and living up to the same laws and promise. If all the branches continue to work together and become better acquainted with each other, as they continue to become bigger, it will mean not only a grand step for the sisterhood, but what is more important, it will be a real help toward making the new League of Nations a real force. How can that be? In this way. If the women of the different nations are to a large extent members of the same society, and therefore in close touch and sympathy with each other, although belonging to different countries, they will make the League a real bond not merely between the governments, but between the peoples themselves, and they will see to it that it means peace, and that we have no more of war. Robert Baden-Powell, May, 1919. End of How Scouting Began by Robert Baden-Powell. Girl Scout Leaders by Esther Eaton. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush. Marquette, Michigan, July 2010. Girl Scout Leaders, published in Careers for Women, 1920. Esther Eaton, National Headquarters of Girl Scouts, New York. Description of occupation. Occupations connected with scouting for girls may be classified into 4 main divisions: clerical, executive, personal, and specialized or technical. As in any welfare organization, wherever there is administrative work to be done, there is at National Headquarters of Girl Scouts the usual amount of clerical work: stenography, bookkeeping, sales, shipping and supplies, record-keeping, filing, telephone operating, mimeographing, and secretarial work. In general, the salaries that go with these positions at National Headquarters correspond with those of business houses, running a little higher than the average paid in other welfare or charitable organizations. National Headquarters has no data relative to the salaries paid to clerical workers in local Girl Scout offices over the country. Executive positions are open to women over a large field in scouting for girls. They may be divided into the following main classifications: positions in connection with National Headquarters, those in connection with local headquarters, and the position of National Field Captain or Field Organizer, who is attached to the staff of National Headquarters. National Headquarters, located in New York City, employs at present a staff of 45 persons, of whom all but 6 are women. These are divided into 8 departmental groups, at the head of each of which is 1 or more executives. The first of these is the administrative department, including the National Director and her assistants, who plan and supervise the policy and the work of National Headquarters and guide the work of the various local organizations throughout the country. 3 of these groups devote their attention to publicity, magazine and editorial work, editing the Girl Scout magazine, The American Girl, the Girl Scout Handbook and Camping Manual, and all other literature issued from headquarters. A 5th department directs the activities of the field, handling correspondence from and to Girl Scout leaders all over the country, and registering officers and scouts, and supervising by correspondence and in personal conference the work of local directors and the national field captains. 31 cities at the present time, and a constantly increasing number of cities, have headquarters with offices for their Girl Scout work. In each of these offices the work is similar, although on a smaller scale than that at National Headquarters. It requires ability to cooperate with other welfare organizations in the field, to secure volunteer leaders and conduct training classes for them, to organize and direct a clerical force, to plan and handle a budget, to raise money, to direct committees, to do propaganda work and publicity, and to speak in public. There are at present 11 field captains or field organizers attached to the staff of National Headquarters, each of whom has a section of the country under her supervision and control what comprises several states. This work, which is very new, will develop into the establishment of district offices of National Headquarters, where work similar to that carried on at National Headquarters will be done. It involves organization work throughout the district. The field organizer will travel to every community in her zone where there are Girl Scout troops, will study the problem peculiar to that community, will encourage the organization of local councils and offices with paid directors, will advise with the captains of the several troops in the community, and try to inspire them with the best standards of troop work, will seek new leaders for newly formed troops, and will stimulate scouting in every possible way during her stay in the community. She will be in touch with the press throughout her district and will attempt to do propaganda work whenever it is needed, will make public addresses, hold conferences, and preside at meetings. When the work is more highly organized, she will open offices in the center of her zone, where she will have the usual executive work to do in connection with conducting a branch office. The third of the 4 main divisions of positions open to women in connection with Girl Scout work is what we have classified as personal work. It is the direct work of supervising and leading the Scouts themselves. These leaders are commissioned from National Headquarters as Scout captains or lieutenants. For the most part, the position of Girl Scout leader is a volunteer one. There were, March 1, 1920, in the United States 3,470 active commissioned captains who are giving time each week to the leadership of 75,000 Girl Scouts. The backbone of the organization is here. Scouting for Girls must stand or fall by the quality, enthusiasm, and discipline of its volunteer leaders. Hence the great importance of establishing courses of training for these leaders which will make clear to them the principles of Scouting and will guide them through the trying first months of leadership. There are at present a few paid positions open to Scout captains, and there will be an increasing number as the work grows in the larger cities. Their function is to take charge of new troops and drill them until a prepared volunteer leader can be found to take permanent charge of the troop. These paid captains are also instrumental in helping with the training classes for volunteer captains. The 4th large division of positions for Girl Scout workers is that of the more technically trained person. Young women who have had special training in physical education and are experts in swimming, canoeing, setting up drill, and can pass the elaborate tests for the higher degrees of Scouting will find excellent opportunities in connection with Girl Scout camps in summer, of which there will be many this year in connection with National Headquarters and in connection with local organizations. There will also be openings for camp workers who are experts in nature study, dietetics, and so forth. Preparation necessary. The preparation and training necessary for any of the positions at National Headquarters are the same as required for any clerical or executive worker in similar fields, except that so far as possible these workers are being drawn from among groups of people who have been Girl Scouts or Scout leaders, or who have passed through one of the captain's training courses so that the fundamental principles of Scouting are familiar to them. The same is true of the executive worker in connection with local councils throughout the country. For the specialized worker who is to lead Scouts or conduct training courses or camps for Scouts, very definite training is required. The opportunities for receiving technical training in Scouting for Girls are of 3 kinds. Certain schools and universities have courses in physical education into which the elements of Scouting have been introduced, and Scout leaders of recognized standing have been asked to give lectures on the subject before these students. Boston University, Johns Hopkins, and Teachers College of New York have all had such courses, and as more leaders are trained and experienced, more courses will be opened up. In 1918-19, Johns Hopkins University, Teachers College, and the Boston University established fellowships for the training of Girl Scout leaders. The first National Training School for Girl Scout leaders is conducted each year at Long Pond, Massachusetts. For information regarding this, write Miss Catherine R. Briggs, 10 Allerton Street, Brookline, Massachusetts. Each summer there are 2 encampments here of 3 weeks each. A second training camp is conducted at Central Valley, New York, where for 2 weeks an intensive course in Scouting is given each season. Here are also 3 encampments of Scouts from New York and vicinity, where training of leaders who serve as counselors will go on all through the summer. For information regarding these camps, write to Department of Camps, National Headquarters, 189 Lexington Avenue, New York City. In addition to these 2 camps, many local councils of Girl Scouts over the country conduct camps for Scouts where officers acting as counselors may receive more or less intensive training. There are courses for Girl Scout leaders given all through the year throughout the country in connection with Scout headquarters in the different communities. These vary in intensity and extent. In New York City, classes are given 1 evening a week covering a period of 9 weeks. No requisite is demanded of persons wishing to take these training courses, other than that they must be genuinely interested in Scouting and must give assurance of their intention of taking the leadership of troops when they have finished. Opportunity for advancement. There is decided opportunity for advancement in the executive and technical fields of Scouting activity. Excellent salaries are paid by National Headquarters to its organizers and departmental heads, and also to executives and instructors in the summer camps and training schools. National Field Captains are earning as much as $1,800 to $2,500, and heads of departments at National Headquarters are earning between $2,000 and $3,000. Opportunities for advancement in the clerical field are naturally limited, but even here every consideration is given to promote persons who show ability to better positions. In the executive and specialized fields opportunities are almost unlimited, for as good executives build up an organization, they make possible for themselves a larger and larger field of activity, and may earn for themselves higher and higher salaries. This is especially true of an organization which is not charitable in its nature, and which is increasingly self-supporting. In the field of personal service as leaders of Girl Scouts, financial advantages are naturally limited, but many workers with ability are being advanced from these positions to executive positions as they demonstrate their capacity to fill them. Qualifications. The qualifications desirable for success in Scouting for girls are those common to all executives, plus affection for and genuine interest in the welfare of the girl herself. Those who are to become the personal leaders of troops of girls must have personal magnetism, coupled with the understanding of how to control without tyrannizing over a group, of how to guide without dictating, of how to develop what is found in the girl rather than to fix upon her a set of ideas or rule of action. Advantages. The advantages of Scouting for girls as a profession for women are obvious. Opportunities for wide and vital contacts with educational movements and leaders throughout the country, opportunities for travel and a delightful out-of-door life in the summer camps, and above all the inspiration of the vital contacts with the Girl Scouts themselves. End of Girl Scout Leaders by Esther Eaton.
Educational Work of the Girl Scouts by Louise Stevens Bryant. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush, Marquette, Michigan, June 2010. Educational Work of the Girl Scouts by Louise Stevens Bryant. Published in Bulletin No. 46 by United States Bureau of Education, 1921. Do you believe that girls should like to work at home, to cook and clean house and mind the baby? Do you believe that a girl should like to take care of her clothes and be able to make them? That she should know how to be thrifty and to conserve the family money in buying and using food and clothing? That she should play a fair game and put the group above her personal interests? Do you believe that she should value a strong, healthy body above clothes and cosmetics, and rejoice in the hope of being some day the healthy mother of healthy children? If you do, you believe in the Girl Scouts, for in this organization the girls learn all these things in such a happy way that they like to do them, which means they keep on doing them. The Girl Scouts, a national organization, is open to any girl who expresses her desire to join and voluntarily accepts the promise and the laws. The object of the Girl Scouts is to bring to all girls the opportunity for group experience, outdoor life, and to learn through work, but more by play, to serve their community. Patterned after the Girl Guides of England, the sister organization of the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts have developed a method of self-government and a variety of activities that appear to be well suited to the desires of the girls, as the 89,864 scouts and the 2,500 new applicants each month testify. History and growth. Girl Scouts and their leaders, to the number of 89,864, were in 1920 organized in every state and in Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and Alaska. There are troops in 1,400 cities and local councils in 162 places. This represents a tremendous growth since the founding by Mrs. Juliet Lowe in March 1912 of a handful of enthusiastic Girl Guides in Savannah, Georgia. In 1915, the growth of the movement warranted its national incorporation, so headquarters were established in Washington, D.C., and the name changed to Girl Scouts Incorporated. In 1916, the headquarters were removed to New York and are now located at 189 Lexington Avenue. From the start, the organization has been nonsectarian and open to all races and nationalities. Through the International Council, the Girl Scouts are affiliated with the Girl Guides of England and all parts of the British Empire, and similar organizations in other parts of the world. At the 1920 meeting of the International Conference at London, reports were received from Italy, France, Belgium, Switzerland, Poland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Holland, Portugal, Russia, Czechoslovakia, Brazil, Argentina, Japan, China, and Siberia, as well as from all parts of the British Empire and the United States. From a membership of 9,769 in January 1918, the Girl Scouts grew to 89,864 in 1921, at the rate of nearly 10 to 1 in 3 years. The greatest relative growth was in 1918, when the membership grew fourfold. During 1919, the increase over the preceding year was more than 2/3, while in 1920 the relative increase was 1/3. The details are as shown in the accompanying table. Begin chart growth of Girl Scout membership January 1, 1918 to January 1, 1921, active registrations. January 1, 1918, officers 1,314. Increase not available. Scouts 8,455. Increase not available. Total 9,769. Increase not available. January 1, 1919. Officers 3,823. Increase 2,509. Scouts 36,847. Increase 28,392. Total 40,670. Increase 30,901. January 1, 1920. Officers 5,357. Increase 1,534. Scouts 61,754. Increase 24,907. Total 67,111. Increase 26,441. January 1, 1921. Officers 6,839. Increase 1,482. Scouts 83,025. Increase 21,271. Total 89,864. Increase 22,753. End of chart growth of Girl Scout membership January 1, 1918 to January 1, 1921, active registrations. This growth is due to a spontaneous demand of community after community for scouting for girls, and not to deliberate propaganda on the part of the national headquarters. The reasons for it are therefore to be sought in the activities and methods themselves, which make such widespread appeal. Activities. A glance through the handbook, Scouting for Girls, will show that the activities of the Girl Scouts center about the 3 interests: home, health, and citizenship. Home. The program provides incentives for practicing women's world-old arts by requiring an elementary proficiency in cooking, housekeeping, first aid, and the rules of healthful living for any Girl Scout passing beyond the tenderfoot stage. Of the 40-odd subjects for which proficiency badges are given, more than one-fourth are in subjects directly related to the services of women in the home, as mother, nurse, or homekeeper. Into this work, so often distasteful because solitary, is brought the sense of comradeship. This is effected partly by having much of the actual training done in groups. Another element is the public recognition and rewarding of skill in this, women's most elementary service to the world, usually taken for granted and ignored. The spirit of play infused into the simplest and most repetitious of household tasks banishes drudgery. "Give us, oh, give us," said Carlyle, "the man who sings at his work. He will do more in the same time. He will do it better. He will persevere longer. Wondrous is the strength of cheerfulness, altogether past comprehension its power of endurance." While the place of most production is today outside the home, much of the final preparation of goods, particularly food and clothing, is still done there. So that while the home crafts are far from being the vital necessities they once were, they are still needed. Handicrafts of many sorts enter into the program of the Girl Scouts. In camping, girls must know how to set up tents, build lean-tos, and construct fireplaces. They must also know how to make knots of various sorts to use for bandages, tying parcels, hitching, etc. Among the productive occupations in which proficiency badges are awarded are cooking, house planning, beekeeping, dairying and general farming, gardening, millinery, weaving, and needlework. While production has left the home, consumption is increasingly the business of the home-keeping woman. There are few purchases, even for men's own use, which women do not have a hand in selecting. Practically the entire burden of household buying in all departments falls on the woman, who is thus in a position to learn how to spend wisely and make the most of each dollar. In France this has long been recognized, and the women of the middle classes are the buying partners and bookkeepers in their husbands' business. The Girl Scout organization encourages thrifty habits and economy in buying in all of its activities. The Scout troops are self-supporting and are expected to earn most of their equipment by means of rallies, pageants, plays, as well as by individual effort. One of the 10 Scout laws is that a Girl Scout is thrifty. Health. The Girl Scout learns that a cheerful Scout, a clean Scout, a helpful Scout is a well Scout. She is the only Scout that really is prepared. So that health, physical and mental, is the keynote to the Scout activities, which are calculated to develop the habit of health rather than simply to give information about anatomy or physiology. Personal health is recognized by the badge of Health Winner, given to the girl who for 3 months follows certain rules of living, such as eating only wholesome food, drinking plenty of water, going to bed early, exercising in the open air, and keeping clean, and who shows the result by improved posture and by the absence of constipation and colds. Outdoor sports, swimming, boating, and dancing are other health-producing activities. Of all health-promoting activities, camping is the best, and this means all stages of life in the open, from the day's hike, with 1 meal out of doors, to the overnight or weekend hike, and finally the real big camp open all summer. Girl Scouts learn how to dress for outdoor living, how to walk without fatigue, and how to provide themselves with food, warmth, and shelter, so that roughing it does not mean being uncomfortable. During 1920, 50 large Girl Scout camps were maintained in 16 states. These are self-supporting, and as they are open for 10 weeks as a rule and accommodate about 50 girls at a time, they give an opportunity to several thousand for the best sort of holiday. The idea is to have enough camps to give every Scout the experience. To promote this work, National Headquarters maintains a camping section and has published a book, Campward Ho!, which gives full directions for organizing and running large self-supporting camps for girls. Community health habits are quite as important as the purely personal, and the older Girl Scout is expected to become a health guardian, which means that she takes an intelligent interest in the things pertaining to public health, such as playgrounds, swimming pools, school lunches, the water and milk supplies, clean streets, the disposition of waste and garbage, the registration of births, the prevention of infant mortality. She also learns how to help in times of emergency as first aid, in sickness as home nurse, and at any time as child nurse. A scout whose mind is filled with interesting facts about birds and animals and trees, and who is busy playing games with her companions, or in making useful and beautiful things, and in rendering active service to her home and community, is apt to have a healthy mind without thinking much about it. And she has a little rule for the blue times, which is to smile and sing under all difficulties. Citizenship. The basic organization of the Girl Scouts into the self-governing unit of a patrol is in itself an excellent means of political training. Patrols and troops conduct their own meetings, and the Scouts learn the elements of parliamentary law. Working together in groups, they realize the necessity for democratic decisions. They also come to have community interests of an impersonal sort. This is perhaps the greatest single contribution of the Scouts toward the training of girls for citizenship. Little boys play not only together, but with men and boys of all ages. The interest of baseball is not confined to any one age. The rules of the game are the same for all, and the smallest boy's judgment on the skill of the players may be as valid as that of the oldest fan. Girls have had in the past no such common interests. Their games have been either solitary or in very small groups, in activities largely of a personal character. If women are to be effective in modern political society, they must have from earliest youth gregarious interests and occupations. Among the Scout activities that tend to develop this larger community sense are games, athletic sports of all kinds, including teamwork and competition between small, well-knit groups. Folk dancing and other forms of amusement, such as dramatics, pageants, and storytelling, serve a similar purpose because they all mean the possession of a resource not only for the right use of the girl's own leisure time, but for serving this need in the community. Methods. The activities of the Girl Scouts are, of course, not peculiar to this organization. Every one of them is provided for elsewhere, in schools, clubs, and societies, but the way in which they are combined and coordinated about certain basic principles is peculiar to the Girl Scouts. In the first place, all these activities have a common motive, which is preparation for a fuller life for the individual, not only in her personal but in her social relations. It is believed that both the habits formed and the concrete information acquired contribute to the girls being ready to meet intelligently most of the situations that are likely to arise in their later life. This concept is expressed in the Girl Scouts' motto, "Be prepared." The method of preparation followed is that found in nature, whereby young animals and birds play at doing all the things they will need to do well when they are grown and must feed and fend for themselves and their babies. The heart of the Girl Scouts' law is helpfulness, and so the Scouts have a slogan, "Do a good turn daily." By following this in letter and spirit, helpfulness becomes second nature. Because the Girl Scouts are citizens, they know and respect the meaning of the flag, and one of the first things they learn is the pledge. I pledge allegiance to my flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Some observers have criticized the Girl Scout organization because of its apparently military character. It is true that the girls wear a uniform of khaki and are grouped in patrols corresponding to the fours in the Army, that they salute and learn simple forms of drill and signaling. But the reason they do this is because the military organization happens to be the oldest form of organization in the world, and it works. It is the best way men have found of getting a number of persons to work together. Following directions given to a group is quite a different matter from doing something alone, and most of us need special training in this. A group of 8 has been found to work the best because it is the largest number that can be handled by a person just beginning to be a leader, and moreover, elementary qualities of leadership seem to exist in just about the proportion of 1 in 8. It is probably on this account that children take so kindly to the form, rather than because of any glamour of the Army, though this must be admitted as a factor. In actual practice, the drill and signaling take up a very small portion of the program and are nowhere followed as ends in themselves, but only as a means to an end. Uniform. The uniform is simple, durable, and allows freedom of action. It is of khaki because this has been found to be the best wearing fabric and color. It is not easily torn and does not readily soil. Wearing it gives the girls a sense of belonging to a larger group, such as it is hard to get in any other way. It keeps constantly before them the fact that they represent a community to whose laws they have voluntarily subscribed, and whose honor they uphold. It is well, too, to have an impersonal costume, if for no other reason than to counteract the tendency of girls to concentrate upon their personal appearance. To have a neat, simple, useful garb is a novel experience to many an overdressed doll who has been taught to measure all worth by extravagance of appearance. Organization. The outstanding feature of the Girl Scout organization is its voluntary character. Among some 7,400 officers and leaders of Girl Scouts throughout the country in the fall of 1920, just 211 were paid workers. This is about 3%. The organization is actually a great volunteer school of citizenship in which the women of the country share with their younger sisters the results of their own experience in ideals and practical working knowledge of community living. Scout troops are organized either independently or in connection with public and private schools, churches, settlements, and other associations. Scouts of different ages. The original Girl Scout program was designed mainly with the needs of the young adolescent in mind, and the age was fixed from 10 to 18 years. But the little girls wanted to come in, and so a separate division was made for them called the Brownies, or Junior Scouts. Then the older girls and women wanted to join, and as time went on, the original Girl Scouts grew up, but not out of the Scout movement, and programs are being made for citizen Scouts who are 18 and over. The three age groups seem to be natural ones, and each has its own methods and activities. The Brownies are formed into packs under the leadership of a brown owl and play games and learn self-help and how to lend a hand to their families. The Citizen Scouts are expected to be self-directing and to take actual part in the life of the community, and either as wage earners or service givers to pay their way. But the large majority of all Girl Scouts belong to the middle group. More girls register at 13 than at any other age. This is interesting, as it marks the age of susceptibility to social ideas, shown also by the fact that it is the most common age of religious conversion. It is also the age of first crime. The distribution of ages at first registration is shown by the accompanying table. The organization of the regular Girl Scouts is as follows. Begin chart, ages of Girl Scouts at first registration. Ages 6 to 9. Number 440. 5 per 1,000. Age 10. 6,059. 73 per 1,000. Age 11. 9,130. 110 per 1,000. Age 12. 14,857. 179 per 1,000. Age 13. 16,434. 198 per 1,000. Age 14. 14,276. 172 per 1,000. Age 15. 10,707. 129 per 1,000. Age 16. 5,810. 70 per 1,000. Age 17. 3,486. 42 per 1,000. Total age 10 through 17, 80,759. 978 per 1,000. Ages 18 and over, 1,826. 22 per 1,000. Grand total, 83,025. 1,000 per 1,000. End of chart, ages of Girl Scouts at first registration. Patrol. 8 girls form a patrol, which is the working unit. One of them is elected patrol leader and has charge of the activities for as long as the patrol wishes. It is desirable to have each girl of a patrol serve as leader at some time or other. Troop. One or more patrols constitute a troop, which is the administrative unit recognized by the national organization. The troop meets weekly and whenever possible at a place which belongs to it. When possible, troops should meet outdoors. The troops are self-supporting and earn money for all equipment as well as for camps and hikes or special activities. Troops are registered with national headquarters and pay annual dues of 50 cents for each member. They also have their own local dues, generally 5 or 10 cents weekly. Captain. The troop is under the direction of a captain who must be at least 21 years of age and whose qualification as a leader of young girls is passed upon by national headquarters before she is commissioned. Lieutenant. A captain may have one or more lieutenants who must be at least 18 years of age and whose commissions are likewise subject to control by national headquarters. Captains and lieutenants may be organized into associations in any given locality. Scout classes. There are 3 classes of Girl Scouts, the youngest being the tenderfoot, the name given by frontiersmen to the man from the city who is not hardened to the rough life out of doors. Even the tenderfoot, however, has to know some things, including the promise, laws, slogan, and motto, how to salute and the respect due to the flag, how to make an American flag, and how to tie at least 4 kinds of useful knots. She must also have earned enough money to buy some part of her Scout equipment. The second-class Scout has been a tenderfoot for at least 1 month and can pass a test of distinctly greater difficulty. This includes, under home interests, the ability to make fires in stoves and out of doors, to cook a simple dish so that it will be palatable, to set a table for 2 courses, to make an ordinary and a hospital bed, and to sew. Under health interests, she must know the main rules of healthful living, her own height and weight, and their relation to the standard. Some simple first aid points such as stopping bleeding, removing speck from eye, and bandaging a sprained ankle. She must also have a variety of facts at her command that will keep her alert and interested when out of doors, such as an acquaintance with animals, birds, and plants, the use of a compass, the alphabet of a signal code, and must demonstrate her ability to observe her surroundings accurately and quickly so as to report upon them. Under topics preparing for citizenship, she must know the history of the American flag, how to prevent fire, and what to do in case of fire, and must have served her troop, church, or community in some way and earned or saved money for some personal or troop equipment. The highest rank is that of first-class Scout. It is to be attained only by a young person of considerable accomplishment. She must be able to find her way about city or country without any of the usual aids, using only the compass and her developed judgment of distance and direction. She must also be able to communicate and receive messages by signaling. She must have shown proficiency in home nursing, first aid, and housekeeping, and in addition in either child care, personal health, laundering, cooking, needlework, or gardening. She must also be an all-round outdoors person, familiar with camping and able to lead in this, or be a good skater or a naturalist, or be able to swim. Not only must she know all these different things, but she must have trained a tenderfoot, started a savings account, and served her community in some tangible way. Proficiency badges. After a Girl Scout has attained to first class, there are still other worlds to conquer, as the badges she has earned on the way are only a few of the many to be worked toward. There are no less than 47 subjects in which a Scout may achieve, and more are being added. Just to mention a few, a Girl Scout may be an artist, a beekeeper, a businesswoman, a craftsman, or a dancer, an electrician, a farmer, a flower finder, a horsewoman, an interpreter, a motorist, or a musician, a scribe, a swimmer, or a stargazer. The highest award given is the Golden Eaglet, which means the earning of 21 merit badges, of which 15 are in required subjects. About 2,000 merit badges are earned a month. An analysis of the subjects show that home nursing is the most popular, with 126 of each 1,000 earned. Laundress comes next with 97. First aid is next with 67. needlewoman, child nurse, cook, pathfinder, health guardian, flower finder or zoologist, and homemaker complete the first 10 most popular badges, with between 61 and 38 in each 1,000. The details are shown in the accompanying table. Begin chart Girl Scout badges earned in 1919 to 1920. Subject: 1. Home nurse. Number 2852, 126 per 1,000. 2. Laundress. 2192, 97 per 1,000. 3. First aid. 1523, 67 per 1,000. 4. Needlewoman. 1389, 61 per 1,000. 5. Child nurse. 1267, 56 per 1,000. 6. Cook. 991, 44 per 1,000. 7. Pathfinder. 990, 44 per 1,000. 8. Health guardian. 923, 41 per 1,000. 9. Flower finder or zoologist. 878, 39 per 1,000. 10. Homemaker. 861, 38 per 1,000. 11. Citizen. 732, 32 per 1,000. 12. Signaller. 647, 28 per 1,000. 13. Bird hunter. 636, 28 per 1,000. 14. Health winner. 600, 26 per 1,000. 15. Pioneer. 595, 26 per 1,000. 16. Artist. 592, 26 per 1,000. 17. Musician. 580, 26 per 1,000. 18. Interpreter. 578, 25 per 1,000. 19. Swimmer. 557, 25 per 1,000. 20. Business. 424, 19 per 1,000. 21. Cyclist. 422, 19 per 1,000. 22. Gardener. 393, 17 per 1,000. 23. Athlete. 345, 15 per 1,000. 24. Horsewoman. 266, 12 per 1,000. 25. Bugler. 254, 11 per 1,000. 26. Scribe. 216, 10 per 1,000. 27. Telegrapher. 192, 8 per 1,000. 28. Motorist. 190, 8 per 1,000. 29. Dairymaid. 190, 8 per 1,000. 30. Farmer. 187, 8 per 1,000. 31. Sailor. 130, 6 per 1,000. 32. Electrician. 101, 4 per 1,000. Total 22,693, 1,000 per 1,000. End of chart Girl Scout badges earned in 1919 to 1920. Local councils. Where troops are numerous, it is usual to form a council composed of women and men representing all the best interests of the community. Parents, schools, religious denominations of all sorts, business, producers, women's clubs, and other social and philanthropic organizations. The council acts as the link between the Girl Scouts and the community. It has the same relation to the separate troops that the school board has to the schools, that is, it guides and decides upon policies and standards, interprets the Scouts to the community and the community to the Scouts. It does not do the executive or teaching work. That belongs to the directors, captains, lieutenants, and patrol leaders. One function of the council is to interest public-spirited women and men, particularly artists and scientists, in Girl Scout work and to get them to act as referees in awarding proficiency badges. But wisdom is to be sought not only in large cities, where there are schools and museums, laboratories and studios. It is a poor community that does not have at least one wise old person, a farmer learned in nature's ways, a retired sailor stocked with sea lore, or a mother of men who knows life as perhaps no one else can. The wise council will know where to find these natural teachers and see that the Scouts go to their schools. Another prime function of the council is to raise funds and to make available such material equipment as campsites, meeting places for the troops, etc. The captain should turn to the council for help in arranging and directing rallies, dances, fairs, pageants, and other devices for entertainment or securing money. National Organization. The central governing body of the Girl Scouts is the National Council, holding an annual convention of elected delegates from all local groups. The National Council works through an executive board, which meets monthly and conducts national headquarters in New York. The National Director is in charge of headquarters, and his direct responsibility for the administration of the whole organization, with the general divisions of field, business, publication, and education, each in charge of a secretary. The field work is administered through 14 regions, each covering several states, and in charge of a regional director, who helps in the formation of local councils, the training of captains, and acts as general supervisor and consultant for all work in the district. Under business comes the handling of mails, all the work of the shop where uniforms, insignia, books, badges, flags, and other equipment are sold, and the distribution of material ordered by mail. There are 3 classes of publications. First, a monthly journal, The American Girl. Second, pamphlets and articles for general propaganda and publicity. These are handled by the editorial and publicity staffs respectively. Third come publications of a technical nature, like the official handbooks for Scouts and officers and outlines for training courses. These form part of the work of the Education Department, who has general oversight of all that pertains to training for leaders and the development of standards of work, including the important feature of coordinating the Girl Scouts with the other educational and social organizations. Camping also forms a part of the work of the Education Department. During 1919 and 1920, the following publications were issued. Scouting for Girls, the official handbook, 576 pages. Camp Word Ho, a manual for Girl Scout camps, 192 pages, designed to cover the needs of those undertaking to organize and direct large self-supporting camps for girls. The Blue Book of Rules for Girl Scout captains, all official rules and regulations, 32 pages. Training courses. Outline for 32-period course, 17 pages. Introductory course, 10 periods, 16 pages. Girl Scout Health Record. Booklet form for recording points for Health Winners Badge. Miscellaneous pamphlets, averaging 8 pages, 128,325 copies. Need for leaders. The growth in membership has been twice as rapid among the Scouts as it has among the officers, as may be seen in the table already given. For every Scout in 1918 we have 10 in 1921. For every officer in 1918 we have but 5 in 1921. For some time to come, therefore, the energy of the national officers must be directed toward the securing of properly trained leaders. Colleges and higher schools are responding to a gratifying extent with the introduction of training courses in scouting for girls. Within 2 years, courses have been given at the following colleges or universities: Adelphi, Boston, Bryn Mawr, Carnegie Institute, Cincinnati, Converse, Elmira, Hunter, Johns Hopkins, Missouri, New Rochelle, Northwestern, Pittsburgh, Rochester Mechanics Institute, Rochester University, Rockford, Simmons, Smith, Syracuse, Teachers College, and Vassar. Also at the following higher schools: Battle Creek Normal School of Physical Education, Brooklyn Training School for Teachers, Chautauqua Institute, Chicago Normal School of Physical Education, Community Service Council of Marquette County, Michigan, Manhattan Trade School for Girls, Milwaukee Normal, State Normal at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Washington State Normal, and Western State Normal, Michigan. The following schools and colleges are asking for courses: Chicago, Cornell, Detroit Normal, Kalamazoo, Michigan State Normal, Pennsylvania State, and Temple University. Through cooperation with the Deans of Women in all parts of the country and with the Intercollegiate Community Service Association, the college women are being influenced to take up scouting as an extra academic activity before graduation and as a form of community service in their hometowns later. In addition to this work through existing educational bodies, many special courses are conducted in connection with the organizations of local councils. The first National Training School for Girl Scout officers has been conducted for 4 years, the last 2 years at Long Pond Camp in Plymouth, Massachusetts. During the summer of 1920, special training camps were also held in connection with the councils of Greater New York, Cincinnati, and Harrisburg, with instruction given under the auspices of national headquarters. 5 such camps are planned for 1921, located in Plymouth, Central Valley, in the Catskills, Lake Mohegan, New York, Philadelphia, and Cincinnati. Scouting in the public schools. Only that organization for young people can succeed which contributes directly to their chief business, which is getting an education. One reason the Girl Scout organization is received so cheerfully by school people is that it works into the school's own plans to a remarkable degree. Local councils have a larger representation from the public schools than from any other single agency. Scout leaders are drawn largely from the teaching force because teachers naturally have a better insight into the needs of young people than any other single group. In a few places, this interest has resulted in the gradual assimilation of scouting into the school system. At Fort Scott, Kansas, this work has progressed furthest, with 90% of all pupils of Scout age either Boy or Girl Scouts. Superintendent Ramsey made a most favorable report on this situation at the Cleveland meeting of the Department of Superintendents of the National Education Association in 1920. Among essential features he mentions the following. The Boy Scout Executive and Girl Scout Commissioner act as recreational directors and have charge of all the health education and vocational guidance. A room is set aside in the junior high school for all scout work, which, however, is passed upon by a council, including persons outside of the school force. Through glee clubs and choruses, great interest in community singing and other music has been developed. The Scout organization is helping to solve the dress problem for both boys and girls. To give the modern ideals of education would be to state the ideals of scouting. The modern teacher is increasingly well fitted to become a good scout leader. Scouting may be best promoted through the public school because that is the only organization that includes all the boys and girls. Moreover, because of close daily association, leaders of school troops can ensure each scout being an active scout. The school also benefits by scouting in a number of ways. Older pupils stay in school longer because of their interest in scouting than because of any other influence. A year of work in scouting will do as much toward acquainting a teacher with the ideals of teaching as a year spent in any college or university of the country. Finally, scouting secures the interest, attention, and goodwill of the parents to the public schools. End of Educational Work of the Girl Scouts by Louise Stevens Bryant.
The Tadger Tales by Jane Shaw Ward. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush, Marquette, Michigan, June 2010. The Tadger Tales by Jane Shaw Ward. Foreword. Considerable interest has been aroused as to the proper spelling of the name of the hero of these stories. The careful reader will note that there is no official spelling, that in the nature of things there could not be, since if the name were written twice alike, both author and readers might forget to forget what he spelled like, which would be quite fatal. Since no authentic picture of the Tajer is available, a species of near Tajer, common to China where these tales are published, has consented to pose on the cover in his place. Author. How the Tajer Got His Tucks. Once upon a time there was a Tajer, and he lived in a camp, and around a camp, and over a camp, and under a camp, and through a camp, all the places that there were in a camp he lived in. But there were some campers that came up to camp, and when the campers were in camp, the Tajer stayed in his hiding place, which was somewhere between the bottom of a tree and the top of the sky. For if any of the campers saw him once, they forgot what he looked like. But if any of them ever saw him twice, they forgot to forget what he looked like, which would be quite fatal. But one night, when the campers were in camp, and the moonlight was bright, and the Tajer was filled with folly, he came out of his hiding place, and he danced in the moonlight, and he danced and he danced, and one of the campers saw him once, and the chief camper nearly saw him twice, and almost forgot to forget what he looked like. But the Range Ranger, who ranged the ranges in that region, saw the Tajer dancing in the moonlight. Then he came across the ranges, and he stood in front of the Tajer, and he said, "Tajer! Tajer!" And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir." Then the Range Ranger said, "Tajer! Tajer, didn't you know that you were not allowed to come out of your hiding place when the campers are in camp?" And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir." And the Range Ranger said, "Go back to your hiding place, and don't let me find you doing this again." And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir," and went back to his hiding place. Then the Range Ranger went away. The next time the campers were in camp, the Tajer stayed in his hiding place, and the next time after that he stayed in his hiding place. But the next time after that the moonlight was so bright, and the Tajer was so filled with folly, that he came from his hiding place and danced in the moonlight, and he danced and danced, and one of the campers saw him once, and the chief camper nearly saw him twice, and almost forgot to forget what he looked like. But the Range Ranger, who ranged the ranges in that region, saw the Tajer dancing in the moonlight, and he came across the ranges, and he stood in front of the Tajer, and he said, "Tajer! Tajer!" And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir." And the Range Ranger said, "Tajer! Tajer, don't you remember that I told you you were not allowed to dance in the moonlight when the campers were in camp?" And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir." Then the Range Ranger took the Tajer to the other side of the hill, and he sat down, and he took out a needle and a long thread, and he put a tuck in the Tajer's right front leg, and he put a tuck in the Tajer's left front leg, but of course it was magic, and it didn't hurt. Then the Range Ranger put the Tajer back in his hiding place, and he said, "Now your front legs are too short to reach, and you will have to stay in your hiding place." And sure enough, his front legs were too short to reach, and he couldn't get out by himself, and he had to stay in his hiding place when the campers were in camp, no matter how filled with folly he might be. How the Tajer Tore his Tail. When the campers went to town, the Range Ranger, who really wasn't as mean as he seemed, used to put up a sort of ladder thing, so that the Tajer could get in and out of his hiding place by himself, whenever he wanted to, and whenever the last camper was halfway to the station, and just a little bit more, the Range Ranger put up the ladder thing, and the Tajer could do as he liked. And the first time after that, when the campers were gone, and the moonlight was bright, and the Tajer was filled with folly, he came down out of his hiding place and began to dance in the moonlight. First he tried dancing on all 4 feet, the way he used to, but his front legs were shorter than his hind legs, and it was all uneven and wobbly, and it made him seasick. Then he tried dancing on his hind legs, but they made his knees ache. Then he tried dancing on his front legs, but all the folly ran to his head, and it made his head ache. Then he sat down on the ground and put his head on his knees, and all he needed was a little sympathy to discourage him completely. Then the Range Ranger, who ranged the ranges in that region, saw the Tajer sitting in the moonlight, and he came across the ranges, and the Tajer heard him coming, and humped up his shoulders, all the more discouraged. Then the Range Ranger stood in front of the Tajer, and he said, "Tajer, Tajer!" And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir," very sad. And the Range Ranger said, "Before I'd be so stupid as to have only one way of amusing myself." And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir," very indignant inside. Then the Range Ranger went away, and the Tajer sat up and said to himself, "I'll show that old Range Ranger that I have lots of ways of amusing myself," which was exactly what the Range Ranger expected. Then the Tajer tried new ways of amusing himself. He thought and he thought. He thought of several ways, but they were not good enough. Finally he thought of a perfectly new way, and he said, "I know what I will do. I'll take death-defying life leaps through the branches." So he tried, and first he took them with his front feet, but he found the tucks began to rip. And then he tried them with his hind feet, but he found he couldn't see where he was going, and besides, he needed his hind feet to push off with. So then he said to himself, "I know what I will do. I'll take death-defying life leaps with my tail." And sure enough, that is what he did. He went swinging through the trees at a great rate, taking death-defying life leaps with his tail, and found it most enjoyable. Presently he went swinging down near the camp, and he found that was a splendid place to play. After a while the Range Ranger came along, and saw the Tajer flying through the branches, and he said, "Tajer, Tajer!" And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir." The Range Ranger said, "Tajer, are you enjoying yourself?" And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir," very proud. Then the Range Ranger said, "Take care you don't tear your tail on some of the branches near the camp, where Kenneth, the tallest camper, has put in the nails." And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir." Then the Range Ranger went away. Then the Tajer thought he would try one of the branches near the camp, but of course he wouldn't go near the nails, and he found a branch, and it was a fine branch, and he took a swing, and it was the best he'd ever taken. But there was a nail in the branch, and his tail caught, and it tore a little, but the Tajer pretended not to notice. The next time he was filled with folly, he came down and swung in the same place, and his tail tore a little more, but he pretended not to notice. But the next time he thought he would try just once more, and he took an extra long swing, and his tail caught, and his tail tore, and his tail tore off, and a piece of his tail fell down on the ground on one side of the branch, and the Tajer and the rest of the tail fell down on the ground on the other side of the branch. But of course it was magic, and it didn't hurt. Then the Tajer was much distressed, and he picked up the end of his tail and wondered how he could mend it. First he tried with safety pins that he found around the camp, but they seemed to tear out. Then he tried with string, but that was too thin. Then he found some tape, and wound it round and round, and he tied it on with string, and pinned it all with a safety pin, and he found that it stayed very nicely, and was as good as new. But nevertheless, after that he was careful not to swing on the branches where Kenneth, the tallest camper, had put in the nails. The Tajer and the Witch. After the winter time came, and the campers had all gone, a witch came to the camp. She looked about, and she saw the camp, and she knew it was exactly the kind of place she would like to spend the winter in. and she saw the old dead bare tree, and she thought to herself, "That is exactly the kind of tree I like to live in winter, because it is magic and keeps off the weather." So the Witch started housekeeping in the old dead tree. First of all she dusted very carefully. After that she got out her tea things and made herself a cup of tea. Then she felt quite at home. All this time the Tajer was watching her from behind a tree, but he didn't come very near, for he was afraid she would see him twice and forget what he looked like. But presently, when the Witch was out gathering herbs, as all wise witches do, and the moonlight was bright, and the Tajer was filled with folly, he came out and danced in the moonlight, and he danced and danced, and the Witch came back and saw him dancing in the moonlight. She got one good look at him, and then the Tajer saw her, and he skipped away to his hiding place, and she only saw him once. Then the Witch said to herself, "That was a most unusual animal. I will go home and think about him." So she went home to her tree, and settled down, and began to think about the Tajer. She thought and she thought, but she couldn't remember what he looked like, and the more she thought about him, the less she could remember, and the more she thought, the less she could remember, and she got terribly anxious and excited, and was afraid she was losing her memory. She worried about it dreadfully for a number of days. The Tajer was worried too, for now the Witch had seen him once, and if it happened again, she would forget what he looked like. But one beautiful night the Witch forgot her troubles and went sound asleep, and the moonlight was bright, and the Tajer was filled with folly, and he came out of his hiding place, and he crept up very quietly to make sure the Witch was asleep. And then he danced in the moonlight, and he danced and danced. He danced on his hind legs, and he danced on his fore legs, and finally he went and took death-defying life leaps with his tail. Then the Witch woke up, and she saw the Tajer. She got another good long look at him, and she forgot to forget what he looked like. Then she got down out of her tree, and she said, "Tajer! Tajer!" And the Tajer was terribly startled, and he said, "Yes, sir." And the Witch said, "Yes, ma'am, stupid." And the Tajer said, "Yes, ma'am." And the Witch said, "Tajer, Tajer, now I know why I forgot what you looked like. You have given me a great deal of unnecessary worry. Now I will give you a taste of your own medicine." And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir, ma'am." Then the Witch did a magic all around the Tajer, and she pinned a magic on the Tajer's back. "Now," she said, "you are quite invisible. You won't even be able to see yourself what you look like." And sure enough, it was true. The Tajer was perfectly invisible. No one else could see him, and he could not see himself. He would not even have known he had tucks unless he felt of them. At first the Tajer liked it, because he could come up behind the Witch and make her jump when she didn't know he was there. And he could get up close and catch the chipmunks without their even knowing he was coming. And once he saw a bird going by in the air, and he jumped and caught that. But still, after a while, he found that it was a nuisance, because he couldn't see his own legs, and when he was taking death-defying life leaps, he was never sure that his tail had caught on the branch unless he felt of it, and this delayed him a good deal. Besides, no one ever spoke to him, and when he spoke to other people, they always jumped. One day the Range Ranger came to camp. He saw the Witch and he frowned, for Range Rangers don't like witches. They say they infest the woods. Then he looked around for the Tajer, but he couldn't see him anywhere. Then he called the Witch. He said, "Madam Witch, Madam Witch." And she said, "Yes." He said, "Yes, sir." She was very angry, but she said, "Yes, sir," because everyone does what the Range Ranger says sooner or later. Then the Range Ranger said, "Madam Witch, Madam Witch, where is the Tajer?" And the Witch said, "Oh, off in the woods somewhere." And the Range Ranger said, "Madam Witch, Madam Witch, where is the Tajer?" And the Witch said, "How do I know? Off in the woods somewhere." And the Range Ranger said the third time, "Madam Witch, Madam Witch, where is the Tajer?" And he looked at her very hard, and the third time he said it she started and looked away, and he knew she knew more about it than she pretended to. Then the Range Ranger went to the tree and took up a large axe and swung it over his head, and he said, "Madam Witch, are you fond of your tree?" And the Witch was very much excited, and she said to the Range Ranger, "Oh, don't cut down my tree. It is much the best I ever had. It keeps off the weather so." And the Range Ranger said, "Very well. Where is the Tajer?" And the Witch said, "He is all right. Call him." And the Range Ranger put his hands to his mouth, and he called very loud, "Tajer, Tajer." And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir," right close beside them, and they both jumped. Then the Witch leaned over and she unpinned the magic from the Tajer's back, and there he was between them. And there was a twinkle in the Tajer's eye, because he knew the joke was on the Range Ranger. And there was a twinkle in the Witch's eye, because she knew the joke was on the Range Ranger. And there was a very small twinkle in the Range Ranger's eye, because he knew the joke was on himself. And then the Range Ranger looked the Tajer all over carefully, and he said, "Tajer, Tajer, is your tail getting on all right?" And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir." Then the Range Ranger went away. But the next time that the Range Ranger came to the camp, he saw the Tajer and the Witch walking along arm in arm, the best of friends. How the Tajer Learned to Swim. Once that winter there was a very bad storm, and the Witch's tree blew down, and all the Witch's housekeeping things were scattered over the landscape, and the Tajer was very much excited. He jumped about and got in the way and watched the Witch pick things up. But when the Witch began to pile things up neatly, the Tajer looked at the piles, and he saw the high pile of wobbly teacups, and he said to himself, "I think it would be a good time for me to go and take death-defying life leaps a long way off." So the Tajer went and did death-defying life leaps through the branches with his tail, and he took them a long way off. And the Witch went, and she found a new tree, and she got all ready to move, and she said, "Tajer, Tajer, come and help me move." But the Tajer didn't answer, so she said louder, "Tajer, Tajer, come help me move." But the Tajer didn't answer. Then the Witch was very indignant, and she did a swift and sudden magic, and the Tajer landed in front of her all out of breath and very much astonished. Then the Witch said to the Tajer, "Just for that you have to help me move all afternoon." And she gave the Tajer a high pile of wobbly teacups, just the way he thought she would. And he had to help her all the afternoon long, and besides that she was most disagreeable. Then, when the Witch was all moved, the Tajer said to himself, "I will get even with the Witch for making me work so hard all the afternoon." And the next time the Witch was away, the Tajer thought of a fine plan. And he took the Witch's teacups, and he loosened the lower ends of their handles, and he taught them all to do death-defying life leaps through the branches by their handles. There was one cup that was a specially stylish cup, and had 2 handles, and that one could do specially fine death-defying life leaps. And after that, whenever the Witch was out gathering herbs, as all wise witches do, the Tajer used to train the cups a little. And finally, when he got them all thoroughly trained, he he started them all to doing death-defying life-leaps through the branches by their handles, just as the witch was getting home. Then, when the witch saw this going on, she was much excited. First she laughed, and then she cried, and then she grew very indignant and quite hysterical. Then the Range Ranger, who ranged the ranges in that region, saw that something was going on at the camp, and he came across the ranges, and he came to the camp, and the witch saw him, and she said to him, "Oh, Mr. Range Ranger, look what the Tajer has done to my teacups." And sure enough, there were all the teacups doing death-defying life-leaps. Then the Range Ranger said, "Tajer, did you teach the witch's teacups to do death-defying life-leaps through the branches by their handles?" And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir." Then the Range Ranger said, "Very well. Discipline must be maintained. Just for that, you can't go swimming for a week." Then the Range Ranger went away. Then the Tajer thought to himself, "I don't think that's much of a punishment. I never went swimming." And the next day the Tajer thought, "I wonder what it would be like to go swimming." And the next day the Tajer went down to see if there was a place where you could go swimming, and there was a fine place. And the next day after that, the Tajer went down to the creek, and he went swimming. He swam and he swam, and his tucks felt queer, but he pretended not to notice, and he had a lovely time. Then he came out, and he ran quickly up the hill, and he jumped into his hiding place so the witch wouldn't see how wet he was. But his tucks had shrunk, and he couldn't get down out of his hiding place once he had got up, because his front legs were too short and couldn't reach the ladder thing. And the next day the Range Ranger, who ranged the ranges in that region, came across the ranges, and he saw the witch, but he didn't see the Tajer. And he said, "Tajer, Tajer." And the Tajer, who was in his hiding place, said, "Yes, sir." And the Range Ranger said, "Tajer, Tajer, come here." And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir." But he didn't come. Then the Range Ranger went to the Tajer's hiding place, and he stood in front of the Tajer, and he said, "Tajer, Tajer, show me your tucks." And the Tajer showed him his tucks, and they were all shrunk. And the Range Ranger said, "Tajer, have you been swimming?" And the Tajer said, "Yes, sir." Then the Range Ranger said, "Very well. You went swimming when I told you not to, and you have shrunk your own tucks, and now you can't get down out of your hiding place, and so you will have to stay there for a week." And sure enough, the Tajer had to stay in his hiding place for a week. But after that the Range Ranger put another rung in the ladder thing so the Tajer could reach, and after that he went swimming whenever he wanted to. End of The Tajer Tales by Jane Shaw Ward.
The Brownies by Juliana Horatia Ewing. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betsy Bush, in Marquette, Michigan, June 2010. The Brownies by Juliana Horatia Ewing. "Bairns are a burden," said the tailor to himself as he sat at work. He lived in a village on some of the glorious moors of the north of England, and by bairns he meant children, as every Northman knows. "Bairns are a burden," and he sighed. "Bairns are a blessing," said the old lady in the window. "It is the family motto. The Trouts have had large families and good luck for generations. That is, till your grandfather's time. He had only one son. I married him. He was a good husband, but he had been a spoilt child. He had always been used to be waited upon, and he couldn't fash to look after the farm when it was his own. We had 6 children. They are all dead but you. You were the youngest.
You were bound to a tailor. When the farm came into your hands, your wife died, and you have never looked up since. The land is sold now, but not the house. No, no, you're right enough there. But you've had your troubles, son Thomas, and the lads are idle." It was the tailor's mother who spoke. She was a very old woman, and helpless. She was not quite so bright in her intellect as she had been, and got muddled over things that had lately happened, but she had a clear memory for what was long past, and was very pertinacious in her opinions. She knew the private history of almost every family in the place, and who of the Trouts were buried under which old stones in the churchyard, and had more tales of ghosts, doubles, warnings, fairies, witches, hobgoblins, and such like, than even her grandchildren had ever come to the end of. Her hands trembled with age, and she regretted this for nothing more than for the danger it brought her into of spilling the salt. She was past housework, but all day she sat knitting hearth rugs out of the bits and scraps of cloth that were shred in the tailoring. How far she believed in the wonderful tales she told, and the odd little charms she practiced, no one exactly knew. But the older she grew, the stranger were the things she remembered, and the more testy she was if any one doubted their truth. "Bairns are a blessing," said she. "It is the family motto." "Are they?" said the tailor emphatically. He had a high respect for his mother, and did not like to contradict her, but he held his own opinion, based upon personal experience, and not being a metaphysician, did not understand that it is safer to found opinions on principles than on experience, since experience can alter, but principles cannot. "Look at Tommy," he broke out suddenly. "That boy does nothing but whittle sticks from morning till night. I have almost to lug him out of beds o' mornings. If I send him an errand, he loiters. I'd better have gone myself. If I set him to do anything, I have to tell him everything. I could sooner do it myself. And if he does work, it's done so unwillingly, with such a poor grace, better, far better, to do it myself. What housework do the boys ever do but looking after the baby? And this afternoon she was asleep in the cradle, and off they went, and when she awoke I must leave my work to take her. I gave her her supper, and put her to bed. And what with what they want and I have to get, and what they take out to play with and lose, and what they bring in to play with and leave about, bairns give some trouble, mother, and I've not an easy life of it. The pay is poor enough when one can get the work, and the work is hard enough when one has a clear day to do it in. But housekeeping and bairn minding don't leave a man much time for his trade. No, no, ma'am, the luck of the Trouts is gone, and bairns are a burden, is the motto now. Though they are one's own," he muttered to himself, "and not bad ones, and I did hope once would have been a blessing." "There's Johnny," murmured the old lady dreamily. "He has a face like an apple." "And is about as useful," said the tailor. "He might have been different, but his brother leads him by the nose." His brother led him in as the tailor spoke, not literally by his snub, though, but by the hand. They were a handsome pair, this lazy couple. Johnny especially had the largest and roundest of foreheads, the reddest of cheeks, the brightest of eyes, the quaintest and most twitchy of chins, and looked altogether like a gutta percha cherub in a chronic state of longitudinal squeeze. They were locked together by two grubby paws, and had each an armful of moss, which they deposited on the floor as they came in. "I've swept this floor once to day," said the father, "and I'm not going to do it again. Put that rubbish outside." "Move it, Johnny," said his brother, seating himself on a stool, and taking out his knife and a piece of wood, at which he cut and sliced, while the apple-cheeked Johnny stumbled and stamped over the moss, and scraped it out on the doorstep, leaving long trails of earth behind him, and then sat down also. "And those chips the same," added the tailor. "I will not clear up the litter you lads make." "Pick 'em up, Johnny," said Thomas Trout, Jr., with an exasperated sigh, and the apple tumbled up, rolled after the flying chips, and tumbled down again. "Is there any supper, Father?" asked Tommy. "No, there is not, sir, unless you know how to get it," said the tailor, and taking his pipe, he went out of the house. "Is there nothing to eat, Granny?" asked the boy. "No, my bairn, only some bread for breakfast tomorrow." "What makes Father so cross, Granny?" "He's wearied, and you don't help him, my dear." What could I do, grandmother?" "Many little things if you tried," said the old lady. "He spent half an hour to day, while you were on the moor, getting turf for the fire, and you could have got it just as well, and he been at his work." "He never told me," said Tommy. "You might help me a bit just now, if you would, my laddie," said the old lady coaxingly. "These bits of cloth want tearing into lengths, and if you get 'em ready, I can go on knitting. There'll be some food when this mat is done and sold." "I'll try," said Tommy, lounging up with desperate resignation. "Hold my knife, Johnny. Father's been cross, and everything has been miserable, ever since the farm was sold. I wish I were a big man, and could make a fortune. Will that do, Granny?" The old lady put down her knitting and looked. "My dear, that's too short. Bless me, I gave the lad a piece to measure by." "I thought it was the same length. Oh dear, I am so tired," and he propped himself against the old lady's chair. "My dear, don't lean so, you'll topple me over," she shrieked. "I beg your pardon, grandmother. Will that do?" "It's that much too long." "Tear that bit off. Now it's all right." "But, my dear, that wastes it. Now that bit is of no use. There goes my knitting, you awkward lad." "Johnny, pick it up." "Oh, grandmother, I am so hungry." The boy's eyes filled with tears, and the old lady was melted in an instant. "What can I do for you, my poor bairns?" said she. "There, never mind the scraps, Tommy." "Tell us a tale, Granny. If you told us a new one, I shouldn't keep thinking of that bread in the cupboard. Come, Johnny, and sit against me. Now then." "I doubt if there's one of my old world cracks I haven't told you," said the old lady, "unless it's a queer ghost story was told me years ago, of that house in the hollow with the blocked up windows." "Oh, not ghosts," Tommy broke in. "We've had so many. I know it was a rattling, or a scratching, or a knocking, or a figure in white, and if it turns out a tombstone, or a white petticoat, I hate it." "It was nothing of the sort of a tombstone," said the old lady with dignity. "It's a good half-mile from the churchyard. And as to white petticoats, there wasn't a female in the house. He wouldn't have one. And his victuals came in by the pantry window. But never mind, though it's as true as a sermon." Johnny lifted his head from his brother's knee. "Let Granny tell what she likes, Tommy. It's a new ghost, and I should like to know who he was, and why his victuals came in by the window." "I don't like a story about victuals," sulked Tommy. "It makes me think of the bread. Oh, Granny dear, do tell us a fairy story. You never tell us about the fairies, and I know you know." "Hush, hush," said the old lady. "There's Miss Surbiton's love letter, and her dreadful end." "I know Miss Surbiton, Granny. I think she was a goose. Why don't you tell us about the fairies?" "Hush, hush, my dear. There's the clerk, and the corpse candles." "I know the corpse candles, Granny. Besides, they make Johnny dream, and he wakes me to keep him company. Why don't you tell us about the fairies?" "My dear, they don't like it," said the old lady. "Oh, Granny dear, why don't they? Do tell. I shouldn't think of the bread a bit, if you told us about the fairies. I know nothing about them." "He lived in this house long enough," said the old lady, "but it's not lucky to name him." "Oh, Granny, we are so hungry and miserable, what can it matter?" "Well, that's true enough," she sighed. "Trout's luck is gone. It went with the Brownie, I believe." "Was that he, Granny?" "Yes, my dear. He lived with the Trouts for several generations." "What was he like, Granny?" "Like a little man, they say, my dear." "What did he do?" "He came in before the family were up, and swept up the hearth, and lighted the fire, and set out the breakfast, and tidied the room, and did all sorts of housework. But he never would be seen, and was off before they could catch him. But they could hear him laughing and playing about the house sometimes." "What a darling! Did they give him any wages, Granny?" "No, my dear, he did it for love. They set a panchion of clear water for him overnight, and now and then a bowl of bread and milk or cream. He liked that, for he was very dainty. Sometimes he left a bit of money in the water. Sometimes he weeded the garden or threshed the corn. He saved endless trouble, both to men and maids." "Oh, Granny, why did he go?" "The maids caught sight of him one night, my dear, and his coat was so ragged that they got a new suit and a linen shirt for him, and laid them by the bread and milk bowl. But when Brownie saw the things, he put them on, and dancing around the kitchen and sang, 'What have we here? Hemptin, Hemptin, here will I never more tread nor stampton,' and so danced through the door and never came back again." "Oh, grandmother, but why not? Didn't he like the new clothes?" "The Old Owl knows, my dear, I don't." "Who's the Old Owl, Granny?" "I don't exactly know, my dear. It's what my mother used to say when we asked anything that puzzled her. It was said that the Old Owl was Nanny Besom, a witch, my dear, who took the shape of a bird, but couldn't change her voice, and that's why the Owl sits silent all day, for fear she should betray herself by speaking, and has no singing voice like other birds. Many people used to go and consult the Old Owl at moonrise in my young days." "Did you ever go, Granny?" "Once very nearly, my dear." "Oh, tell us, Granny dear. There are no corpse candles, Johnny. It's only moonlight," he added consolingly, as Johnny crept closer to his knee and pricked his little red ears. "It was when your grandfather was courting me, my dears," said the old lady, "and I couldn't quite make up my mind. So I went to my mother and said, 'He's this on the one side, and then he's that on the other, and so on. Shall I say yes or no?' And my mother said, 'The Old Owl knows,' for she was fairly puzzled. So says I, 'I'll go and ask her tonight, as sure as the moon rises.' So at moonrise I went, and there in the white light by the gate stood your grandfather. 'What are you doing here at this time of night?' says I. 'Watching your window,' says he. 'What are you doing here at this time of night?' 'The Old Owl knows,' said I, and burst out crying." "What for?" said Johnny. "I can't rightly tell you, my dear," said the old lady, "but it gave me such a turn to see him, and without more ado your grandfather kissed me." "How dare you?" said I. "What do you mean?" "The Old Owl knows," said he. So we never went." "How stupid!" said Tommy. "Tell us more about Brownie, please," said Johnny. "Did he ever live with anybody else?" "There are plenty of Brownies," said the old lady, "or used to be in my mother's young days. Some houses had several." "Oh, I wish ours would come back!" cried both the boys in chorus. "He'd—" "Tidy the room," said Johnny. "Fetch the turf," said Tommy. "Pick up the chips," said Johnny. "Sort your scraps," said Tommy. "And do everything. Oh, I wish he hadn't gone away." "What's that?" said the Tailor, coming in at this moment. "It's the Brownie, father," said Tommy. "We are so sorry he went, and do so wish we had one." "What nonsense have you been telling them, mother?" asked the Tailor. "Highty-tighty," said the old lady, bristling. "Nonsense indeed! As good men as you, son Thomas, would as soon have jumped off the crags as spoken lightly of them in my mother's young days." "Well, well," said the Tailor, "I beg their pardon. They never did aught for me, whatever they did for my forebears. But they're as welcome to the old place as ever, if they choose to come. There's plenty to do." "Would you mind our setting a pan of water, father?" asked Tommy very gently. "There's no bread and milk." "You may set what you like, my lad," said the Tailor, "and I wish there were bread and milk for your sakes, barons. You should have it, had I got it. But go to bed now." They lugged out a pancheon, and filled it with more dexterity than usual, and then went off to bed, leaving the knife in one corner, the wood in another, and a few splashes of water in their track. There was more room than comfort in the ruined old farmhouse, and the two boys slept on a bed of cut heather, in what had been the old malt loft. Johnny was soon in the land of dreams, growing rosier and rosier as he slept, a tumbled apple among the gray heather. But not so lazy Tommy. The idea of a domesticated Brownie had taken full possession of his mind, and whither Brownie had gone, where he might be found, and what would induce him to return, were mysteries he longed to solve. "There's an owl living in the old shed by the mere," he thought. "It may be the Old Owl herself, and she knows, Granny says. When father's gone to bed and the moon rises, I'll go." Meanwhile he lay down. The moon rose like gold, and went up into the heavens like silver, flooding the moors with a pale ghostly light, taking the color out of the heather, and painting black shadows under the stone walls. Tommy opened his eyes and ran to the window. "The moon has risen," said he, and crept softly down the ladder, through the kitchen, where was the pan of water, but no Brownie, and so out on to the moor. The air was fresh, not to say chilly, but it was a glorious night, though everything but the wind and Tommy seemed asleep. The stones, the walls, the gleaming lanes, were so intensely still. The church tower in the valley seemed awake and watching, but silent. The houses in the village round it had all their eyes shut, that is, their window blinds down, and it seemed to Tommy as if the very moors had drawn white sheets over them and lay sleeping also. "Hoot, hoot," said a voice from the fir plantation behind him. Somebody else was awake then. "It's the Old Owl," said Tommy, and there she came, swinging heavily across the moor with a flapping stately flight, and sailed into the shed by the mere. The old lady moved faster than she seemed to do, and though Tommy ran hard, she was in the shed some time before him. When he got in, no bird was to be seen, but he heard a crunching sound from above, and looking up, there sat the Old Owl, pecking and tearing and munching at some shapeless black object, and blinking at him, Tommy, with yellow eyes. "Oh dear," said Tommy, for he didn't much like it. The Old Owl dropped the black mass onto the floor, and Tommy did not care somehow to examine it. come up," said she hoarsely. She could speak then. Beyond all doubt it was the Old Owl, and none other. Tommy shuddered. Come up here," said the Old Owl. The Old Owl sat on a beam that ran across the shed. Tommy had often climbed up for fun, and he climbed up now, and sat face to face with her, and thought her eyes looked as if they were made of flame. "Kiss my fluffy face," said the Owl. Her eyes were going round like flaming Catherine wheels, but there are certain requests which one has not the option of refusing. Tommy crept nearer and put his lips to the round face out of which the eyes shone. Oh, it was so downy and warm, so soft, so indescribably soft. Tommy's lips sank into it, and couldn't get to the bottom. It was unfathomable feathers and fluffiness. "Now what do you want?" said the Owl. "Please," said Tommy, who felt rather reassured, "can you tell me where to find the Brownies, and how to get one to come and live with us?" "Oh ho," said the Owl, "that's it, is it? I know of 3 Brownies." "Hurrah!" said Tommy. "Where do they live?" "In your house," said the Owl. Tommy was aghast. "In our house?" he exclaimed. "Whereabouts? Let me rummage them out. Why do they do nothing?" "One of them is too young," said the Owl. "But why don't the others work?" asked Tommy. "They are idle, said the Old Owl, and she gave herself such a shake as she said it, that the fluff went flying through the shed, and Tommy nearly tumbled off the beam in his fright. "Then we don't want them," said he. "What is the use of having Brownies if they do nothing to help us?" "Perhaps they don't know how, as no one has told them," said the Owl. "I wish you would tell me where to find them," said Tommy. "I could tell them." "Could you?" said the Owl. "Oh ho, oh ho!" And Tommy couldn't tell whether she were hooting or laughing. "Of course I could," he said. "They might be up and sweep the house, and light the fire, and spread the table, and that sort of thing before Father came down. Besides, they could see what was wanted. The Brownies did all that in Granny's mother's young days. And then they could tidy the room, and fetch the turf, and pick up my chips, and sort Granny's scraps. Oh, there's lots to do." "So there is," said the Owl. "Oh ho! Well, I can tell you where to find one of the Brownies, and if you find him, he will tell you where his brother is. But all this depends on whether you feel equal to undertaking it, and whether you will follow my directions." "I'm quite ready to go," said Tommy, "and I will do as you shall tell me. I feel sure I could persuade them, If they only knew how every one would love them if they made themselves useful." "Oh ho, oh ho," said the Owl. "Now pay attention. You must go to the north side of the mere when the moon is shining." "I know brownies like water," muttered Tommy. "And turn yourself round 3 times, saying this charm: 'Twist me and turn me and show me the elf. I looked in the water and saw.' When you have got so far, look into the water, and at the same moment you will see the brownie, and think of a word that will fill up the couplet and rhyme with the first line. If either you do not see the brownie, or fail to think of the word, it will be of no use." "Is the brownie a merman?" said Tommy, wriggling himself along the beam. "That he lives under water?" "That depends on whether he has a fish's tail," said the Owl, "and this you can discover for yourself." "Well, the moon is shining, so I shall go," said Tommy. "Good-bye, and thank you, ma'am." And he jumped down and went, saying to himself as he ran, "I believe he is a merman all the same, or else how could he live in the mere? I know more about brownies than Granny does, and I shall tell her so." For Tommy was somewhat opinionated, like other young people. The moon shone very brightly on the center of the mere. Tommy knew the place well, for there was a fine echo there. Round the edge grew rushes and water plants, which cast a border of shadow. Tommy went to the north side, and turning himself 3 times, as the old Owl had told him, he repeated the charm: "Twist me and turn me and show me the elf. I looked in the water and saw—" Now for it. He looked in and saw the reflection of his own face. "Why, there's no one but myself," said Tommy. "And what can the word be? I must have done it wrong." "Wrong," said the echo. Tommy was almost surprised to find the echo awake at this time of night. "Hold your tongue," said he. "Matters are provoking enough of themselves. Belf, kelf, delf, velf, gelf, helf, jelf. What rubbish! There can't be a word to fit it. And then to look for a brownie and see nothing but myself." "Myself," said the echo. "Will you be quiet?" said Tommy. "If you would tell one the word, there would be some sense in your interference, but to roar 'myself' at one, which neither rhymes nor runs. It does rhyme, though, as it happens," he added. "And how very odd! It runs, too: 'Twist me and turn me and show me the elf. I looked in the water and saw myself,' which I certainly did. What can it mean? The old Owl knows, as Granny would say, so I shall go back and ask her." "Ask her," said the echo. "Didn't I say I should?" said Tommy. "How exasperating you are! It is very strange. Myself certainly does rhyme, and I wonder I did not think of it long ago." "Go," said the echo. "Will you mind your own business and go to sleep?" said Tommy. "I am going. I said I should." And back he went. There sat the old Owl as before. "Oh ho!" said she, as Tommy climbed up. "What did you see in the mirror?" "I saw nothing but myself," said Tommy indignantly. "And what did you expect to see?" asked the Owl. "I expected to see a brownie," said